TalkSTL.com real spoilers powered by ReviewSTL.com.
Warning, the following film discussion will ruin the ending of any movie you haven't seen. Example, Bruce Willis is dead at the end of The Sixth Sense. See how I ruined it for you? Just like that. Here are a few more.
Silent breed is people!
I am your father.
Get it?
TalkSTL.com real spoilers. You've been warned.
Broadcasting from a radioactive bunker deep within the Bracket compound, this is Real Spoilers. I am Tom O'Keefe and
Joe. Dan.
Blake.
Kevin.
And this week we're going to tackle The Lone Ranger. It's the much anticipated, by some, I suppose, attempt to recapture the Pirates of the Caribbean magic. I know Dan didn't get a chance to see The Lone Ranger, so he
well,
can
it's not technically out yet.
This
so.
is true, but by the time they hear this, it will be.
Yeah,
so we don't
whatever.
get sued.
Suck it.
But didn't everybody else get to
I
it?
did. Yep.
Okay.
I think three of us were at the same screen.
I really wish I had it.
We'll start with Blake because he hates it the most.
Oh god, this movie was it was 2.5 hours of boredom. Don't go see it. Just let us spoil it for you. I mean, really, like it looks like a movie that should be a ton of fun, but instead you have this incompetent main character who like falls through half of the movie and never like. Okay, the Lone Ranger. Like I mean, the way they set it up, you know, you want him to be a badass. He's gonna grow to be a badass. He never even approaches that at the end of the movie.
No, not even close. Not even close.
And that was my main flaw with the movie, besides the fact that it was just boring, is the main character. He never evolves to the point where they set him up to. He's a bumbling character throughout the entire movie, and there's no reason to think, oh, he's going to be this action hero along with his sidekick Tonto, you know?
Right.
I'm not as familiar with, you know, I didn't watch Lone Ranger. I mean, it's a little past my
Sure.
my
I
time.
think the only reason I watched it is because
Quit looking at me.
they played
it
it.
went off the air in like 1958. It's past my time too.
There was
We
an
did get
hour and a
repeats,
half.
though.
There was an hour and a half slot before I remember before I would go to school, where it was the Lone Ranger, Adam West Batman, George Reeves Superman. That's what I remember. So that was my first version.
Well, I
of it.
definitely did watch The Lone Ranger as a child, and it's I think I enjoyed the movie. I'm certainly not going to stick up for the movie, but I think I enjoyed it more than you did. I don't know where Kevin landed on it.
You know, I thought it was fun. You know, I got to thinking about it afterwards, and I thought it was way too long. They should have cut about a half hour to 45 minutes off.
It absolutely did not need to be 2.5 hours.
I thought that the fun scenes, the action scenes they did put in it were really fun. I thought Armie Hammer had a great chemistry with Johnny Depp.
Oh, see, that was one of my big points. Is I thought they had no I think Armie Hammer is probably one of the most wooden people like out right now. I can't see him get. He's what's the guy who did John Carter and Mars? Him
Taylor Kitsch?
Yeah, him and Taylor Kitsch need to have like a.
Could you
like
imagine
a one-off.
that guy was almost your Batman?
Yeah,
It was.
He's great in Friday Night Lights, but
See, I think the problem, you know, I think the character that he was written, you know, in the script, I think was more of a bumbling idiot, was more of a goody-goody. I don't think they should have written that character for the Lone Ranger. I liked the chemistry, or lack thereof, I guess you could call it, between the two of them, because Tonto was very much trying to get him to be the man that the Lone Ranger should have been, and I liked how, you know, he was kind of just running things, and you know, Armie Hammer just was rigid and everything. I mean, I think that was the character in the script. I don't think that was Armie Hammer's fault, but
I think the other problem you're going to have is that unless you ooze charisma, you're standing next to Johnny Depp.
Yep.
Like you just are. So it's like you're gonna, you know, and so like. The studio had to have been mortified when Johnny Depp was like, "Oh, I would love to be in The Lone Ranger. I will be Tonto."
Yeah,
right.
Like that's like I would love to be in Sherlock Holmes. I will be Watson.
like I kept on thinking of Tropic Thunder with, you know, Robert Downey Jr.
He just
Yeah.
destroyed everybody else on screen whenever he was
Well,
there.
no, it was just you know him playing the white actor playing the black
Right.
guy. And that's what I'm like, this is really happening. Like,
Right, yeah.
Like-
and it's funny because he's so popular that everybody gave him a pass. Like I think even didn't the Comanches make him an honorary Comanche because
he's got
Johnny Depp.
he's got part Cherokee.
Sure he does.
Well, I mean, he's got a movie that hasn't been released called The Brave, and he's been trying for years and years. It's his directorial debut.
Yeah.
And it's a movie about I believe it's an alcoholic Native American who decides to make a snuff film where he's going to be offed, and the money will go to his family. Now that says summer all over.
Right. That's,
This is Johnny Depp's movie, and
That's
it's
a
yet to be
franchise.
released yet. And I think it's been in the vault, obviously, for we can tell why. But
What did you guys think about Johnny Depp? I liked him in the role.
Oh man,
I liked him, but I thought he was limited by the kind of broken English that Tonto is forced to do, which is something that Jay Silverheels was always appalled at having to do. Like, he was not a fan of doing that.
yeah, I don't know. I think Disney was trying to recapture a lot with
Absolutely.
Captain Jack.
Yeah.
And that's a once in a lifetime character. You're
or,
not
or
gonna
5.
or 5.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, once in a
Once in a
lifetime.
lifetime, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it didn't work for me. Like, there were definitely moments where I laughed, but overall,
I mean, he's a charming dude. He's gonna make things work. But yeah, no, it felt very forced. It felt like they definitely were trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
recapture
definitely were
Captain
trying
Jack magic.
to create another Pirates of the Caribbean, which who can blame them? But I think also that they really
because Disney has like no cash cows.
yeah. Look, we got nothing to
they're
go on. We got
struggling, you guys. This is funny.
And I think that they definitely felt like they needed to make Tonto smarter, and they needed him to be the brains of the operations to stave
So
off
it didn't seem racist.
to stave off any criticism, which is ironic because the Lone Ranger, like if you know anything about the history of the Lone Ranger, is an aggressively non-racist show, like especially for its day.
Yeah,
now you have to take
absolutely.
some of that in historical context, but just the idea of a white man and an Indian working together, and they were partners.
Absolutely.
They were. I mean, people that don't watch the Lone Ranger always kind of look at Tonto as a subordinate. But if you go back and watch those episodes, he was not.
No, he wasn't a manservant or anything like that.
He was a true equal to the Lone Ranger, which was very unusual for the time. Also, the Lone Ranger, like they had this. The guys that created the Lone Ranger had this huge list of things that you could and couldn't do in a Lone Ranger script, and this movie violates quite a few of them. And I don't mean that like they're like moral things, like or like the show always had an emphasis on logic, and so they didn't just want it to be like, and then we shot all the bad guys and the show was over. And so that's why, like, if the Lone Ranger was ever captured by, like, arrested, like, he always had to get away pretty quick because they knew that it would make no sense. They're not going to let him sit in a cell for 4 days and leave his mask on, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. So, like, they would do stuff like that, and that, that he didn't shoot to kill. That's why he was always shooting the gun out of people's hands, which seems quaint or silly, but that was his deal. And that, he always like spoke very properly. He didn't use like colloquial expressions or any slang. And then what I thought was really interesting is that his adversaries were almost always Americans. So like they didn't have him just doing nothing but fighting Mexicans along the border.
It wasn't Mexicans. It wasn't Chinese.
Right. Like there were
Native Americans.
There's like a handful of episodes where he fought anyone other than Americans, and then the names of the villains were almost always one character names, because they didn't want to accidentally create a character that might be deemed racist or offensive, like a Black Bart or a and so they didn't give them adjectives for their names, so it was just it was Butch Cavendish. It wasn't
That's actually there was a comic series by Dynamite. Dynamite Comics has a tendency to pick up properties. So I think they had like an Army of Darkness comic at one point. Any property that they think they can make money. So they did a book, I believe it was in 2000 actually. It was 2006. That was kind of like a resurgence of the Lone Ranger, and they took parts from that comic and put it into the movie. So the idea that in the comic it's John Reed's entire family. All of the male parts of his family are Texas Rangers, and they are killed. And they leave John alive, thinking they've killed him. Tonto, who in the comic he doesn't talk. He never talks. He's big. Like he's a big, like a linebacker, the size of a linebacker. Kind of takes him and turns him into Lone Ranger, and then it becomes a revenge.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it becomes a revenge movie. He's not there to help anybody. He wants to find the guy that killed his family, that killed all of his father and his brothers. And I thought that's the way they were going in the beginning. And I was like, all right, like they're going to roll with this, and Johnny Depp's not going to talk, and it's going to be fine. And then they do a complete 180 and turn it into Pirates of the Caribbean. which I was not a fan of. Like if they would have followed that original 12-issue run from the book, I think it would have been much more interesting from my standpoint as a moviegoer to see like a different version of the Lone Ranger.
I think I get tired of all the goofy action set pieces in the Bruckheimer and Gore Verbinski movies. Like there's a scene in the Lone Ranger where Tonto jumps off of another train onto
walks
yeah. Well, no, not that part. The part where he jumps off of a bridge onto another moving train and lands right on the silver, like on rocks of silvers, and like you'd think he'd like landed on a bed of feathers, and he's just like whatever. Like I mean, the dude fell like 100 feet, moving it probably like 60 miles an hour and
on
hit
jagged rocks.
On jagged rocks, with no shirt on, by the way.
That's one of those inexcusable things. You know, a lot of that.
But there's like 100 moments of that in the movie, and I'm fine. I'm fine with like a couple, but when you have so many of them, they just cast this disillusionment on me where I'm just like this is ridiculous. I can't watch it.
I guess I have an easier time taking that in a movie like this, which is like, especially by the end, so obviously a cartoon, where I have a harder time like if that were to happen in like a James Bond movie, which has a little bit more of a grounding in reality. Like, you know, those when they get punched, it hurts. They don't just like shake it up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like especially the current James Bond. And so like I know what you're saying. I don't disagree, but it's like I like this movie, especially by the end. I really liked how by the time you finally get the William Tell overture, you get the music. I thought they did something really clever there, which they're getting ready to excuse me to they're having this big announcement for the territories for the railroad, and but there's a band playing, and the band is playing like Hooray for the Red, White, and Blue, and because that's what they would play at that time, and they played something else that was very like, you know, Sousa kind of, you know, and then when the Lone Ranger finally kind of appears as the Lone Ranger, and you take off that big final action set piece where you get the classic Lone Ranger theme, like it made that theme seem less cheesy because they had basically given you an overture of like other kind of cheesy music, and that because you can't do the Lone Ranger without doing that music.
It seemed very cheesy at some. Like I think they play it earlier in the movie,
but they undercut it because it was like
it was like a Fatboy Slim remix, right? That's okay.
But they because they like made fun of it, where that was when he starts. The movie's a framing device, and Tonto in 1933, which is the year the Lone Ranger premiered, is telling the story to a boy. And so like they start and they play it, and then he stops it. The boy stops it, kind of like Princess Bride. He's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And so it's like when you would get those little pieces, they would kind of pull you out. You know?
So that's one thing with the framing device. When at the beginning you see them do the bank robbery, I thought that was probably one of the best action. That short little period where they actually seem like they know what they're doing, and like, you know, Lone Ranger goes in and, you know, firing, shoots down this chandelier and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's what I want to see. Like I want to see a Lone Ranger who's a marksman and can, like, you know, actually do stuff. And he fires his gun like twice, and I'm like, I don't need him to be like shooting people's heads off or anything. But I'd like to see. Well, he's a Western character.
I mean, every single episode he would shoot somebody's gun out of their head.
Yeah, I was gonna say
every single
and that's
time.
What's frustrating is I get that today, like, you can't have your your hero going around just shooting people willy-nilly, but the Lone Ranger didn't. Like, you don't have to retcon him to make that work.
But
like,
he
that was his deal.
And he's like, I don't use guns, and I'm like, you're the Lone Ranger.
That's you know, I don't know the source material as well as some of you guys might. Did they totally change the character as far as how? I mean, he was just not doing anything in the first 3/4 of the movie. I mean, as far as he was against guns, and he just
did they give you an origin in the original stuff?
Yeah, you have an origin, and it's the true origin was pretty close to that, where the Rangers get killed, and they think he's dead. Butch Cavendish does it. They leave him for dead, and then Tonto, he hadn't already met Tonto. Tonto stumbles on him, saves him, and that's where they bond. And there's a whole mythology. Like, there's an origin story for Silver. There's an origin story for Scout. You don't really see Scout, and that's Tonto's horse. You don't really see him in this movie. But there's a whole thing that that the people that created this, like, were very much aware. Like, they seem to start from the get-go know what they were doing and wanted to create.
Was he
something.
A lawyer in the original one? Or they
I don't think he was a lawyer. He was just a ranger.
Okay.
But I liked making him a lawyer. I think that made sense.
Yeah.
It gives him a background for
it gives him a legal background, but not like a lawman background. And so like I liked that, but I just like, and I like some of the stuff that they were trying to do, and there were moments where it worked for me. But yeah, like I said, I certainly won't sit here and be like, this is crazy.
I mean,
How can you
I'm not
going to
say there weren't moments I didn't enjoy, but unfortunately, there were so many moments that I didn't enjoy that decreased my enjoyment of anything else.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think that they should have done more playing with the framing device, like they did in the opening scene.
I thought
I liked that,
yeah.
and I was like, oh, that's cute. Like I could see them continuing to do that and breaking the fourth wall, and like I really liked that, and that would have felt really and they never really went back to that, and that was I mean, they went back to the framing device, but not to the breaking of the fourth wall. But I think that brings up a larger question, which is it time for Hollywood to stop it with the origin stories? Every reboot starts with an origin story.
I think at this point I think all of our characters at this point we've got Superman's. Everybody knows how Batman became Batman. Everybody knows what happened to Spider-Man. I think with the Lone Ranger, though, it's a little bit different because he's not as popular.
That is a little bit different, but the thing is that I think people forget that when these characters started, like when Superman started, like it was like 9 panels. It was like he was born on Krypton. They shot him to Earth.
Absolutely.
Here
Same
they
thing with
found him.
Batman.
He was a strong.
exactly.
He was a strong baby. He was an adolescent. He went to Metropolis. He joined a paper. Superman, go. And then the rest of it was a Superman story.
Right,
and instead we get an hour of him brooding, and I don't know, and it's
all
like,
right, we're not going back to the Man of Steel
but
podcast.
no, but what I'm saying though, and I'm not trying, but you could say this about a lot of these movies. You could say it about the Amazing Spider-Man. You could say it about and it's like the thing is that in the comic books, like we enjoyed these characters. They created really good stories that drew us into these characters so much that we said collectively, how did this all begin? And then the story becomes interesting because we're invested in it. But instead, they start with these origin stories, and it takes them. It's all prologue.
I love origin stories. However,
I
think they've gotten heavy-handed over the past, especially the past decade, especially. It's great to see that normal person transform into something different.
I think
and I think you need to set that level. That hey, these people started out like you or I, and they
It has a baseline.
yeah. And but you don't need to spend half the movie on it.
But
I think
movies are
I think
so
there's one character that comes to mind whose origin is his story, and that's Captain America. I think you don't get to Captain America without seeing Steve Rogers as the skinny kid.
I would grant you that. But I think for the most part, like I liked how the Tim Burton Batman movie did it, even though I think there's a lot of things about that movie that don't hold up. But I really like that it started where he's just Batman, bitches, and he's kicking ass, and I'm Batman, and what else do you need to know? I'm Batman.
Yeah, and then we get a little recap.
And then they kind of give you that in flashback, but they didn't. Like nowadays, if they'd have made that movie, the first hour would have been him going
I think
to
they
see
did it.
Zorro.
Wasn't
They did
Hellboy
it.
that way too?
Batman Begins was kind of
It's been a
similar as
while.
well.
Didn't Hellboy just like they go jump right in the
He's
movie,
Hellboy.
and then you get little snippets of how he came,
Correct,
and then
yes.
so that's how I would like to see it. So you know how he started,
Right.
but you don't need to spend half the movie
Right.
discussing it, and I mean you need to set that baseline. That's it.
Well, the problem is with these movies is that Spider-Man is a great example. Is that they're so expensive and they're so time consuming, and there's so much at stake that you can do Spider-Man. We have an origin, and then 10 years later we've got freaking Spider-Man and an origin again. And my fear is that it's it's like they feel like that the attention span is so short that if we don't do the origin, so for the next Batman movie, whatever it will be, that they're gonna have to do another origin story.
I
and
really
it
like. I think
sucks
if
because
there was actually
we all got it.
Jeff Johns and Gary Frank did a great graphic novel called Batman Earth One.
Yeah.
That is an updated version of the Batman story. Thomas,
that one's messed up.
it's Thomas Wayne and Martha Arkham are his parents, and there's the Penguin who isn't the Penguin. It's just Oswald Cobblepot makes a run. Like Cobblepot is the mayor. Thomas Wayne wants to be mayor. Cobblepot sets everything into motion so Wayne and his wife are killed. That's a story that you could tell on screen that's different. Yeah,
Right.
you're gonna
Right.
lose. Batman's gonna lose his parents anyway, but it's a different. It's not just a random person.
I like when the comics do
backstory.
that, and they take elements of an origin story
Correct.
and they
Right.
find a new twist on them, and it tells a whole new story. But like typically, that's not what we're doing. Like in Amazing Spider-Man, is that origin story really drastically different?
But it
than
is different. That's what I liked about it. I
Not
was going to say they
correct. I
take
don't-
it from the Ultimate line. It makes more sense to me that Peter Parker becomes Peter Parker from this experimental lab than a field trip. Because
is
where
that-
are kids going to
got
go on
that.
a field
But
trip
is that
and
drastically
to see
different?
radioactive.
it just is weird.
But
you
is
know?
that I don't feel like that's a drastic enough change to devote an hour of your film to
No, I
retelling
agree.
a story.
Let's skip over the line of with great power becomes
Great responsibility.
Like they just took a thesaurus and they're like, how can we make this different
Yeah.
so it's not the same?
Right.
Yeah, and so it's like I just don't. I didn't have a problem with the origin story or what they did. I don't mean it like that. I just mean like I don't feel like they changed it, like what you described with the Batman Earth 1 thing. Like
totally
that's
different.
That's a whole new story.
You still
that
get the
you're
main
telling me.
plot, but it's a different, completely different
But
catalyst.
you get Peter Parker's parents, which you do, Richard and Mary Parker,
Right,
which
right.
you do not get in the Sam Raimi version. I
Right.
mean, there is a ton different in that origin. I think if you really go back and think about it and compare the two to like the original, you know,
I mean, the original Spider-Man is he goes on a high school field trip to a science experiment. And
Yeah.
a spider drops
Gets
down.
bit.
The Ultimate line is it's similar. They're on a field trip.
they go
he
to
gets
Oscorp.
he goes to Oscorp and gets bitten by a genetically mutated spider, giving him the abilities.
which ties in so much better to the rest of the Oscorp.
It's a fun- yeah, you-
Norman Osborn and stuff.
Right,
It's
you-
really
you
neat.
tie-
I enjoyed that movie, and I had concerns going in. I seem to have that a lot,
thought he
but
was
I had
great.
concerns going. I was like, man, again. But my issue really is that every time they want to do a reboot, it seems like we're constantly in the state of rebooting, and we're never getting further into the story because we have to do the origin, and that's going to be 2 hours, and then you got your half hour at the end.
Well, now a lot of these movies too, you also have the second movie where they regress the character emotionally, and they add another origin piece that needs to be added into it.
Yeah,
So
they retrofit an origin piece that we just didn't get to hear
in
about.
case you
last
missed
time.
it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, come on again. So I just feel like we're
get it, we
in
get
this
it.
constant state of rebooting and retelling the origin, and we're not getting these characters any further. And it's just one of those things. And I honestly, like I've said, my fear is that with whatever Batman becomes part of the Justice League, when they do that and they reboot the Batman series, that we're gonna get another retelling, and it's
The same
it's
stuff.
not
Right.
going. It's gonna be the classic origin. That now we'll have people who were fairly young when Burton's version came out, and then saw the Nolan's version, and then it'll be another variation of that.
But if they do make it John Blake and they continue it, I mean, that would be awesome.
If they
that's
do, that'd be
that's what
great.
I want to see. Is like just don't do it. Like tell people, hey, it's the same studio for crying out loud. I mean, Warner Brothers can go, want to see the origin? Rent this or buy this,
Right.
Because that's where you're going to see it.
Or
Because
show it on
this
YouTube
is where we're starting.
as an extended teaser.
Yeah,
You
it's
know what I mean? Like,
this is where we're starting. We're
Yeah.
not going to do it again. And I would hope that Nolan had enough clout to sort of tell them, yeah, just go on from there.
See, and that's one of the things is the Batman Begins. I mean, that whole movie is just basically one long origin story, but it worked because he had to set an entire
Universe, entire world.
a whole new world up, and so I think the origin story
It validates
yeah.
having an origin
But
story.
I think if they continue if they grow off of that, they can ditch the origin story. They can get deeper into a character.
Yeah.
They don't have to. I mean, they don't have to, force feed us these origin stories anymore.
Yeah.
Especially now when you can go online and read 500 different variations of the.
And I think there are unique ways where you can still tell an origin story without being, just starting from the beginning.
Every time.
I think you can. I just don't think that most of the time they're doing it.
Well, going back to Lone Ranger, I mean, I think that is when we talk about cutting a half hour to 45 minutes off. I think that's where the main flaw is the beginning of that movie is so long and drawn out, and the Lone Ranger doesn't really do anything for so long.
Right.
Like Blake said earlier, he wants a Lone Ranger that can do cool stuff and,
Right.
and isn't as bumbling and everything. Because I know that it was goofy action, but it is one of those Bruckheimer movies, so you're going to have that kind of action that's not necessarily believable. But that's the point where I thought it got really fun is when they started doing that stuff,
Right.
for what type of movie it is.
Yeah,
but
that
you
last,
don't get there.
That
for
last
so
action set piece, that was a lot of fun. It was silly and it was completely divorced from reality, but but that's what you're there for. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that didn't bother me just because that's what it was designed to be. Like I don't feel like they were trying to be serious, and I'm just like, what? I mean, that's what they wanted to be.
So it kind of felt like a bait and switch. The first half of the movie in this origin looked like it was more grounded in reality. He's this
I thought it was
lawyer.
gonna be much darker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they make it seem like that movie. Then they switch it into the fun, goofy comedy. It should have just been a Lone Ranger, goofy, not believable, but that's what it is
Right.
type of movie.
Right.
And like Jack Sparrow is bumbling, but he still somehow manages to accomplish those things. Like
Right.
it's like his bumbling is his secret weapon. Like You know what I mean? Like
You
it's-
don't take him too seriously, and then
Right.
they turn on you.
Yeah. and-
Well, his bumbling is actually able to kind of float above the rest of the movie when you're watching it. So you're
Right.
like, hey, okay, I liked him.
It's Keith Richards.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the rest of it.
But anyway, so I guess we've probably done enough spoiling for this week.
Can I say before we wrap it up? I don't know if anybody knows the actual history of the creation of the Lone Ranger and who the Lone Ranger's great grandson is.
Actually, it's his great nephew.
Is his great nephew?
The kid that you see in the movie, Dan.
Is it him? Is it
that's
Reed?
that's Dan Reed. That's the father of
the Green Hornet.
the Green Hornet.
Yeah.
Now
So the
I don't
original the creator of the Lone Ranger is also the creator of the Green Hornet.
Correct.
So he tied everything together by giving them the same last name.
But I think that since those properties have been separated, so like
I believe so.
they couldn't at the moment
Right.
anyway. If this was a big enough hit, turn that kid into the father of the Green Hornet. But originally, yes, that is how it worked.
Yes, I was really
And
excited.
it's very much modeled on it, right? It's like
Yes.
the Green Hornet has his foreign sidekick,
Right.
who's very adept. Like Kato wasn't a punchline. It wasn't a
No,
punchline.
he was freaking
no,
lean.
He was
He was,
badass, and and so they definitely just kind of took a modernized the Lone Ranger, even to the mask and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about the Lone Ranger and various westerns, Dan has a segment he likes to do called Video Recovery. Explain that for us.
Well, basically, I just take sort of a framing around the movie of the week that we're discussing and spoiling, and try to find something that people could readily see right now, either on video or streaming, and it's usually tying into it something that maybe people missed or just forgot about.
Awesome. And this week's title is?
It's going to be Silverado, the 1985 movie starring, oh my gosh, everybody: Brian Dennehy, Jeff Goldblum,
Kevin Kline, right?
Kevin Kline, who's great, and Kevin Costner. This was kind of his star-making role in this movie.
That's right.
Written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan, who made a couple
Empire Strikes Back.
contributions there with Empire Strikes Back and the script for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And don't forget Grand Canyon.
No,
Which by the way, Kasdan's going to be working on the next Star Wars trilogy too. He's not
That's
tied to
right.
the first one, but he's tied to the second,
he
third of this
is.
trilogy.
He's like a consultant,
Yeah.
or
well,
maybe
him
they'll-
and his script writing partner are
Yeah.
writing the script for the second and third movie of the trilogy.
which is what was key in getting J.J. Abrams on
Yeah.
board. So
Awesome.
that guy, that J.J. Abrams guy.
Silverado, 1985. Wasn't a lot of westerns in production. It's kind of a dead genre.
Well, I was say, would you consider the genre dead at that point?
Oh, absolutely. And so Lawrence Kasdan, who had built a little clout after the success of Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark, had this movie that he had been sitting on, and he wrote with his brother Mark, and it's called Silverado. It's an action western, action comedy almost. It stars Scott Glenn, who great. I hate to call him a character actor, because he's great in almost everything he's in, but he's kind of a character actor. He hasn't really carried a movie. This is probably his biggest lead. He's had some B movies and some cult movies, and it's probably biggest movie is Silence of the Lambs, and he's Jack Crawford,
yeah.
Clarice's superior. So it's Scott Glenn, Kevin Kline, and a more adventurous lead for him, more of an action role for him. Young Kevin Costner, who actually got the role in this movie because Kasdan also, this is right after The Big Chill. And Kevin Costner shot a whole bunch of scenes for The Big Chill. He's the guy who ended up killing himself, and everybody gets to get. So sorry, spoiler. So he's the guy who's dead.
It's the show. It's all right.
Yeah, he's dead, and everybody's coming back together for his funeral. So Kasdan felt really bad because he thought his performance was really good, but it just worked better to not show him in flashbacks. It was like it just kind of too jarring. So he wrote this with Kevin Costner in mind. Wrote this role, and Costner was like, "Okay, cool," and then he plays this sort of the young, loose cannon cowboy, and it's not to delve too much into it. I mean, it's just because there's a packed audience. You got John Cleese, you got Jeff Goldblum, you've got Brian Dennehy, you got Jeff Fahey. It's a tremendous, just jam-packed movie.
A lot of big names in that.
Yeah, big names, and and bit parts too. and Danny Glover, who's great in it, and it's just very simple Western comedy that at the time, everybody's like, this is gonna bomb, and it came out. It did pretty well and sort of re-energized the whole genre. And it obviously sounds substantially better than The Lone Ranger. So I mean, I would say if anybody hasn't seen it, it came out in '85. You might be able to catch it streaming or in a box that is red. So I would definitely give it a gander.
I'd give it a go before Lone Ranger.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite movies is Tombstone, and that was
Oh,
1992. Is
Yeah.
that the reason why Tombstone was probably able to be made? Because of the
Absolutely, yeah.
Remember, Costner was also his
He was
Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp.
Which, I mean, those came out the same year or within a year of each
Within a
other.
year, they were the competing Wyatt Earp movies. The funny thing about those is that they thought Costner's was a given. I was like, man, this thing's gonna swallow up that Tombstone movie. It is gonna die on the vine. And turns out, and Tombstone was a troubled production. They had one director who was fired. Then they had another director step up, and George Cosmopoulos, and he actually isn't really the true director. Kevin or what's his name? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Snake Plissken. So Snake Plissken's
Russell.
Kurt. Thanks. Handsome man Kurt Russell steps up, and he secretly directs the movie behind the guy and makes all the cuts and edits. Anyway, so that movie, based largely because of his portrayal of Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer owns that movie, and
he's
that movie,
awesome.
all of a sudden, everybody's like, "Wow, that Wyatt Earp
Who's
movie
that
sucks."
guy?
You
Which
know?
is such a shame because Dennis Quaid's Doc Holliday I really
Great.
enjoyed. but
Absolutely great.
You put him up against Val Kilmer's and it's not.
Wyatt Earp is one of those movies. It's just like The Lone Ranger, a little too long.
Yeah.
I think
It's
that's
bloated.
It's
bloated.
It kind of kills it a bit. Where Tombstone's way more straightforward. And
Tombstone is a straight up action movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
There's
It's a
nothing
great
else to
action
it.
movie. And it's funny. One of the extras that the original Laserdisc. I remember I had the Laserdisc, and I watched the behind the scenes and the extras. And the director, who didn't really direct it, was so proud that all the mustaches were real. So anytime you watch Tombstone, you remember and respect the fact that those are all real mustaches.
I'm sure there are people who will listen to this who don't even know what Laserdisc is.
That's a shame. I know.
Yeah, or the DVD.
Or
Or Blu-ray,
VHS.
VHS.
or the
Please be kind and rewind.
Oh, $1 charges at Blockbuster when I first started there.
Yeah. So
Not
I mean,
rewinding your movies.
yeah, all good choices. Yeah, well, not Wyatt Earp so much, but I mean, unless you just want to have something in the background while you paint.
So maybe a double feature of
Double
Silverado
feature.
Tombstone would be a
That's
good
a good
choice.
Silverado
That's a good
Tombstone.
one.
That sounds awesome. So yeah, that's a video recovery this week. Go out, find them at your rental store, box, or streaming online.
Sounds good.
So that is this week's episode of Real Spoilers, episode number 3. They said we'd never make it. The over-under was 2, I believe. So there you go. So we have sufficiently spoiled Lone Ranger for you. Don't forget to tune in next time when we will tackle Pacific Rim, or as the kids like to call it, Pac Rim. They like to
Is that what they're calling it now?
I think so. They abbreviate everything, these kids today, and their damn abbreviations. So thanks for tuning in. Next time, Pacific Rim. Until next time, Snape killed Dumbledore.
TalkSTL.com Real Spoilers, powered by ReviewSTL.com.
Warning, the following film discussion will ruin the ending of any movie you haven't seen. Example, Bruce Willis is dead at the end of The Sixth Sense. See how I ruined it for you? Just like that. Here are a few more.
Silent breed is people!
I am your father.
Get it?
TalkSTL.com Real Spoilers. You've been warned.
Broadcasting live from a radioactive bunker deep within the Bracket compound, this is Real Spoilers. I am Tom O'Keefe, and sitting around the table this week is...
Joe.
Dan.
Blake.
And Kevin.
And before you email me to correct, it should have been R, not is. But anyway, just
grammar Nazi.
Yeah, Mrs. Siefker is in my head right now from 6th grade. That should have been an R, not an is. So anyway, this week we will be spoiling Pacific Rim, robots fighting monsters. What could go wrong there, right?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Charlie Day awesomeness. That's what.
But before we dive into Pacific Rim, I think let's check in with the numbers for the weekend. Let's see how movies are doing, and we will start with Kevin. He's got our box office report.
It's really no surprise that Despicable Me 2 came in at number 1 again. I mean, even with all these movies opening up, these new big summer movies, that movie just took off from the Wednesday it was released and all the way up until now. It came in at $44.7 million estimated for the weekend. So second weekend in release still holds the number 1 title. To my dismay, Grown Ups 2.
To everybody's dismay, sitting around this table.
Everybody, I was going to say everybody's dismay, except apparently ticket purchasers.
Yeah, right.
This is why good movies don't get made, because you support movies like this.
It came in slightly lower than Despicable Me at $42 million. And in number 3 is Pacific Rim with $38 million.
So has anyone seen Grown Ups 2 besides me? Has anybody actually sat through it?
I have not.
Absolutely not.
I can't sit through a second one when I despise the first one as much as I did.
You will end up having a retroactive fond affection for the first one after watching the second one.
You're saying the second one is so bad, you're like, that first one wasn't as bad as I thought.
Correct. Like it was fascinating in its awfulness.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did the review for the first Grown Ups, and I'm pretty sure I gave it like a D or maybe even F. I mean, I hated that movie.
Was Steve Austin in the second one? Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yeah.
He was? Okay.
In the second one.
He's in the second one, right?
Yeah, he's in the second one, yeah. And
what is it about?
Grown Ups,
Exactly. That's the problem. Is it takes place on the last day. Well, I guess we're gonna end up doing a mini review of Grown Ups 2 because it's fascinating.
You can
and
do
it's
a mini review of
awfulness.
Grown Ups 2.
It takes place on the last day of school. They've all moved to this town except for Rob Schneider, who is gone and they make no mention of, which is not like a big deal. Except the entire premise of your film is about the importance of friendship.
Did they have a falling out with him or something?
I don't know, because Rob Schneider's in like all of his movies.
Yeah.
It's weird even if it's just one line. So it's really odd that he's just completely MIA. I don't know what that means, like politically behind the scenes, because that is
that's kind of
wasn't he a main part of the first one?
Yeah, he was
His
a major.
daughters were like, wasn't that the big deal? Like he had this hot daughter. They're like,
yeah,
where the hell did that kid come from?
Yeah, I mean, he was a major character in the first movie. So anyway, he's gone. They make no reference to that, but it takes place on the last day of school. The whole movie takes place on the last day of school, and there's no attention paid to like continuity or timelines, or like the movie opens and like his wife goes to work, and then she goes to yoga class, and then she goes to her daughter's dance recital. It's the last day of school. Yes, it is, but we're still going to a dance recital at noon. Okay, sure, that's how those things work. But she does all that before noon. And meanwhile, he's at Kmart with his friends, and then all of a sudden he's over here, and then he's at the dance recital. And then there's a scene after the dance recital where he's teaching his son how to kick a football at football practice in June.
On the last day
on the last day of school, they're having football practice. I don't know anything about sports, and I know that's a big load of shit.
Wait a minute,
like, that's not how that works.
Did you say someone goes to Kmart? I can't believe
I don't believe that either. They did a great
shit.
movie about the last day of school. It was called Dazed and Confused.
Yeah.
Go watch that movie. It's much
But it
better.
was just like it was just one, like, there's Kevin James' character does this thing where he burps and sneezes and farts simultaneously.
Did he explode?
And sadly no. And it's a running gag. Like, they must do it 7 or 8 times. They think it's so funny. It's the out joke of the film. Like, that's what they end on. Like, ta-da! And in my review, my opening line in my review was the opening joke of this film. Not just scene, mind you. The very first joke of this film is a deer pissing in the face of Adam Sandler, and I want to be that deer. That's all I can say.
So you liked it?
Yeah, it was.
Was that
just
so?
awful.
Do you think the Kevin James part was supposed to be Chris Farley?
Yeah, in
Like
fact,
that-
in my original review of Grown Ups, I was like, clearly based on everyone else he brought in. It's all his SNL alums.
Right.
Had Farley lived,
It was going to be him.
that would have been. There's no way they did.
Does that save those movies?
Right.
No.
You don't think Farley saved?
No.
Well, I guess we
I
don't
mean,
know what Farley would have been.
Well,
had he-
also
had
let's
he
not
lived.
put on our rose-colored glasses too much. Chris Farley made a lot of crappy movies too.
Tommy Boy and Black Sheep are some of my favorite movies.
Okay,
still.
but then everything else.
Everything else.
Everything
Beverly Hills
else.
Ninja,
Yeah.
Almost Heroes.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like I really don't think that he would have been the savior of SNL cinema. I mean, he might have had another couple funny movies or some, but I mean, he certainly wasn't a machine cranking out hysterical pictures.
No,
especially as coke-addled as he was. I just don't see that being turned. Not to be
I miss Chris
speak
Farley.
ill of the dead, but I
miss funny Chris Farley. How about that?
Yeah. So anyway, that was Grown Ups 2. We didn't plan to do that, but it just kind of happened.
So good that it brought up dead Chris Farley.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So I guess let's tackle Pacific Rim, shall we? So for those of you, again, just to recap what we do here, this conversation is designed for people that have already seen Pacific Rim or don't care if we spoil it for them. Hence the name of the show, Real Spoilers. So let's begin. I guess we'll just start with a quick recap of the film, which is pretty much there's giant robots and they find giant monsters. It takes place in the not too distant future, but there's really not. I mean, there's more, but that's the gist of it. So I guess we'll just jump right in. We'll ask what people thought. Let's. Kevin seems ready to. He's chomping at the bit. So Kevin, what
he is going
give
down
us
on
your
that mic.
take of. Hey, careful now. Let's keep it clean there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Hey,
that was late night.
Mike doesn't care.
So what was your take on Pacific Rim?
You know, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. It was everything that I could have possibly imagined it was going to be. Going into it, having seen the first trailer months ago, I really was not too excited for it, but luckily they recut the trailer, put some better stuff in it, and I actually started getting excited to see what it would be. And what it is just over 2 hours, I'm pretty sure, of just pure action. I mean, everything growing up, thinking of Transformers, you know, giant robots, you know, any of the cartoons that had those. I mean, bringing that to life in a way that actually blended in with live action and made it seem like it could be real if those existed. It was hard hitting. The action was great. The CG was great. And I couldn't have been happier with it.
Blake?
I mean, I also was a big fan of it. I've been a big fan of like kaiju and mech series and stuff in my life. I mean, I'm not one of those people who watches a ton of anime, but I've watched enough where like if you watch anime, you love giant mechs. I mean, like my favorite is Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is kind of similar to it's like basically if you take Pacific Rim and add a lot of weird Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy to it, you have Evangelion. But I think Pacific Rim worked because it's kind of light on, like, you can kind of just check your brain at the door and watch it and just really enjoy the action. I loved the how the action was very deliberate. There was it was a lot of times very wide shots so you could see what was going on. There was none of that rough and tumble stuff you see in the Transformers where like, did I just see a robot penis?
I'm not sure what that was.
What is happening in this movie?
Yeah. That was one of my biggest complaints about, especially the second Transformers, where there were whole scenes where I was like, you might as well have just handed out kaleidoscopes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like,
and I really hope that this can actually get some word of mouth and keep on going, because I think this type of action is something I want to see more of in Hollywood movies, rather than the shaky cam and like very kaleidoscopic like action sequences that are like in Transformers. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
cool. Dan?
I mean, I honestly thought it was just a big dumb sort of drive-in movie.
Sure.
That I absolutely loved because of that.
Yeah.
And for me, it went straight back to Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, which is one of the earliest sort of manga anime shows, and that's from, I actually have my notes here, so Mitsuteru Yokoyama, who
well done.
created
Holy cow.
You should have just pretended like you could do that off the top of your head.
Miyaka.
You're the guy that goes to Taco Bell and you're like, I would like a burrito. And a Diet Pepsi.
He's the guy who did Tetsujin 28 Go, which in the States was known as Gigantor. And then after Gigantor in 67, 68, he did 26 episodes of, it was called Giant Robo. And around between 70 and 74 here, they aired it as Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. And I went straight back. That was, for me, it was like Ultraman, Johnny Sacco, Johnny Quest, Speed Racer, done. You know? I mean, it was like all those in a row. I think Guillermo took a lot of influence on this because that villain is based in the bottom of the ocean. His name is he's Emperor Guillotine, of the Gargoyle Gang.
Whoa.
And
I think that might be a metaphor.
Anyway, so I mean, he's this guy who's in the bottom of the ocean. He keeps sending giant monsters up to take over the planet. Giant Robo is operated by a little kid wearing a wristwatch who, they fight. And it's a man in suit show. So, I mean, it's like Power Rangers.
Sure.
When that came out, everybody's like, oh, man, this is so cool. And I'm like, come on, man.
They did this already.
20 years ago I saw this. And for me, it was just that. It was just like, here comes a big monster. Here comes a giant robot. And they fight. Giant robot gets beat. Let's regroup. Fight, yay! And that's exactly what the movie was. I mean, it was a pure, just, like, I could tell that there was a lot of fondness for this. And I kind of touched on this a little bit in the reviews, that if you look at big, monster movies, I mean, the last one that came to mind for me was the remake of Godzilla.
Back in, what, 99?
98,
98?
I think. And it was terrible.
Yeah.
Matthew Broderick and
Hank Azaria.
Harry Shearer. I mean,
Godzilla as himself.
Oh, it's and there's absolutely. I mean, when you watch that movie, you can tell that there's, it was the Americanization of it, and there's absolutely no love for Godzilla. It's like, it's Godzilla, but we're going to change his look, and we're going to change the story, and we're going to make sure it's not a dude in a suit.
Yeah.
So
Godzilla
it was just
1985. It wasn't. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it just wasn't. There's no fondness for it. This clearly had a fondness for its source material. And for me, I was just like, there's a lot of dumb things that happen in the movie,
right.
And but there's hardly any exposition that, like, they're terraforming. They don't do anything. They don't do that. But I also, there was a moment in the movie I'm like, because I looked around, I was like, I'm not quite. Where are they going with this? And then the Russians. As soon as I saw the Russians with the, Drago blonde hair, and I'm like, okay, yeah, they're going full on crazy cartoon on this.
Right.
All right. And I sat back and just enjoyed it.
Yeah. Joe?
Before I get started, can we make their terraforming an ongoing joke?
It's a running gag. Just be a sound drop.
Exactly.
Just like a Willem scream.
Yeah. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I thought it looked amazing. I love Guillermo del Toro, so if you put his name as a director on something, you've already got me.
What if it was Grown Ups 2?
I think it would be a very different movie.
Be a very different movie.
Well, it would have Ron Perlman, so it'd be awesome.
It'd be all right. And I love... Actually,
he would play the deer.
Yeah. Everybody in this... I love the entire cast of this movie, with the exception of Jax. I don't know what is the actor's real name, but the guy from Sons of Anarchy.
Charlie Hunnam.
Thank you. Idris Elba. I love Charlie Day. I think is one of the funniest actors that's not getting enough work in Hollywood right now, with the exception of It's Always Sunny.
Just wait. He's in Horrible Bosses 2 coming up.
I love Horrible Bosses.
I think he's got a few other things. He's the guy who's getting more work than any of the guys.
He's funny in this. Like he adds a great level of comic relief to this. It was so much fun. I think that's the thing that I take away from it, is that it was fun. I had a fun time at this movie. So I can't recommend. I hope Blake, as Blake said, that we get some word of mouth on this flick and it sticks around for a while.
And what I would say, as soon as I left the movie, and I know there's a new Godzilla movie coming out, is that they need to take notes. This is how you do a Godzilla movie.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have, people, however they're doing it, fighting a giant monster, this movie is the
end all be all. This is
the prototype.
Yeah, and it doesn't suck because we can get another movie that looks like this. But if Godzilla looks anything like this, that's going to be a badass movie.
Tom, what did you think of the movie?
Well, I guess I'm slightly different in that I didn't hate the film, but I just have no passion for it either way.
Burn the heretic.
I didn't
cut his mic.
I did like that they didn't go with the whole shaky cam to hide the effects, but I feel like they did another trick where they just kept it too dark.
It's all rainy.
It's like they keep fighting. The bulk of the fights take place at night and the ocean. In the rain. And it's and so it was like it became very difficult to see, especially the 3D version, which is already loses about 15 to 20% of the brightness anyway. And so I was on board with what they were trying to do, but I felt like I kept to myself thinking, well, I like what they're trying to do, but I really wasn't liking what they were doing as much as I had hoped, and not in a pick it apart kind of way, because it's not. I mean, you're right. It's robots fighting monsters. You can't pick it apart. Like that's not what it's trying to do. And
there wasn't enough robots fighting monsters.
Yeah. Damn it! And I'm very
Can you
much
fight 3 monsters?
and I'm very much willing to accept it on that level. It's just like I don't know. I feel like if I could have seen the fights more, and so when I couldn't see the fights as well. Then I had to fall back on the story and to entertain me, and the story obviously is what it is, and so I kind of left just kind of.
I mean, you've always been a person who's had trouble with 3D movies and things like that.
Yeah, I have.
You just.
Yeah, like 3D doesn't work for me. Like I cannot see 3D coming at me, and so I'm not grabbing at the screen like other people, and so, but at the same time, like I don't really ever comment on the 3D in a film for that purpose, because it's like I can't bring anything to the table. If I was colorblind, I wouldn't discuss the color palette.
I'm just wondering if, like, I mean, everybody else at the table really thought the action was clear cut and very. I thought it was very visually well done.
I thought it was,
and I had no like. In fact, I talked about this on a previous podcast with Christmas Carol or whatever. I couldn't see hardly any of that movie because it was so dark. I didn't have that problem with this movie. I think there was enough accents in it. And another like action film that I had a problem with the 3D and how dark it was Tron Legacy. I thought that movie
that was a really dark movie.
Was so dark, and the neon accents were cool, but like when you can't see anything between them, it's not, but I didn't have that problem with Pacific Rim, so I wonder if maybe
I will say it doesn't seem like a universal problem, but I have seen a significant number of reviews comment the same, and some reviews are like they were positive and they were like, but it was a little dark in spots, and other reviews they had much more vitriol for the film than I didn't hate it, but I was just like I came to see monsters fighting robots. I would like to actually see.
I also thought this is in my opinion this is the best 3D post conversion I've seen yet. I thought that Man of Steel, the conversion was not very good. There wasn't a lot of scenes that
wasn't really.
There are scenes in this movie. The opening scene where you see the kaiju for the first time. There are like specks of dirt or rock flying at the screen, like coming at the screen, or maybe it's when the
bridge
Jaeger
collapses.
drops. Yeah, just I mean, it looked really, really, really good.
But see, what upsets me about that is the usage of post conversion. There's no reason to not be filming these things in 3D at this point.
Well,
Like,
originally Del Toro didn't want the movie in 3D at all. It was only supposed to be a 2D release. So
I bet based on those box office numbers, he's pretty glad he's got some 3D to boost that. 'Cause if he didn't have 3D ticket sales right now.
True.
I'm sticking by this. I might be wrong. I really think this is going to have good word of mouth, just because I know more people who have gone to see it who weren't interested in it and had heard from a screening or something to go see it and ended up loving it, and I think that's going to end up multiplying on itself.
I agree.
I'm afraid that the name is too.
Yeah, it's a bad name.
I mean, it's like people are like, I don't know, what's that about? Isn't that a store at the mall?
Given the recent Glee news, I'm sure that probably doesn't help the numbers at all.
What do you mean?
The guy for the
No, I know that the guy who plays Ben Hudson died
at the Pacific Rim Hotel.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
that's going to screw up their Google searches. That's for sure.
It's a movie tying.
They planned it.
Yeah, he didn't know, but no, the name.
It's an awful
right off the
name.
bat, the name was like, I don't know. I mean, if they just called it Bang Crash, it'd be like they probably would have better sales. Because Pacific Rim, I was like, it's probably a little.
So it's
too...
another John Carter.
Yeah.
Who or what is John Carter?
Which is unfortunate.
I was
because
so
of
angry that
the
movie
history
well.
of
That's a
books
whole nother-
there, but
yeah, I agree. I enjoyed that movie, so whatever.
I mean, what else would you? I mean, I'm not sure Pacific Rim is a good. I mean, because there's really no reference to the name in the film either.
No.
Other than the fact that they go to the Pacific Rim, but like it's not.
It takes
it's not
place
like
there, but it doesn't
it's not
really
a
spell it
focal
out for
point.
you.
Yeah, I mean, were they trying to be cerebral?
Where's the portal?
Or
Where's the portal located?
I'm probably on the Pacific.
I thought
Rim.
that's where it
That's-
was
that's
located.
where-
That's where it opened up. at.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it just right off the bat, it was like, I think people were like, well, what's that about? Even though it's like you see a giant monster and a giant robot. Well, what's that about though?
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's a giant robot and a giant monster.
robot, and a giant- what more do you want, man?
Well, I mean, Kevin went into the film not thinking he was going to like it. I brought my buddy who had no interest in seeing the movie. I'm like, come on, just come see it with me. And they both ended up, raving about the movie afterwards. So I think it's one of those movies, if the word of mouth can carry it, it might end up being okay. I don't think it's going to like blow any box office records up or anything.
I say the problem you're going to have is on a movie with a budget like this, And when you come out to a $40 million opening weekend,
Yeah.
you
I
got
still
a
think
lot of ground to make up. It's going to do great overseas.
I was
though.
gonna say that. What's the overseas? Because that's the thing that's gonna probably.
That always
It's always
bolsters-
fun to. It's always fun when they have these like international casts in their films, and you can,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
you can go through and you can be like, okay, this is like it is just like the top 3 most important international box office
Absolutely.
markets.
It's no
It's
accident.
So calculated.
No, I mean it is. Like I said, as I was watching it, I was like, okay, I see what they're doing here. I'm in. You know,
Yeah,
because it
right,
did take
right.
a moment. I was like, because I was like, I'm not tonally. I wasn't sure where they were going, and that's when and like the 3 the crimson the 3-armed robot guy, which was
amazing
operated by the
mathematicians.
triplets.
What I like that they did in the movie is they made it an international fight. I think it makes more sense, not
Yeah.
just to sell tickets, but I mean, if you think about it, there's these
Global.
giant monsters coming out, attacking everywhere. I mean, people are going to have to team up. It's not just like a, Superman's American debate, where like, oh, he's only going to save the U.S. Why doesn't he go to these other countries? I mean, this makes sense. It's like they're all going to band together and have different robots from different countries. And
We've all been attacked. We have to work together,
Right.
else we're all gonna die.
Well,
It's
and,
a- yeah,
and
it's a good-
design-wise, the robots, I think, like, the Russian robot was big and bulky and kind of
Right,
looked
right,
a little
right.
outdated. And the Japanese robot, had, like, an appendage that really made no sense and just stuck out the back.
then
And, you're
you-
like, Japan.
Yeah.
And then,
Entire
You get the
robot.
American one that's just kind of
Eh.
like, we'll be all right.
It's like
we got it.
Yeah, it's like a Buick.
We're dependable. I
yeah,
guess.
it was the Buick
was
of
the
robots.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was certainly a
Chevy.
concession to international box office appeal, but it worked within the construct of the film.
Absolutely.
Like that was
I do think it's kind of odd that humanity gives up on the program that's been like getting them.
That was
through,
the
like,
weird-
the
I didn't
past
understand
20
this.
years. They're like, we're gonna build a giant wall that they break through in an hour, and we're just gonna. And even after that, we're still gonna ignore the.
They
Jaeger
actually, I
program.
find it interesting. They actually bring that up in the movie because I think the people, I think one of the news reporters was like, the people are starting to ask, why did you shut that program
Yeah.
down? They were the ones that saved us. Why are you shutting it down?
Yeah.
Or why wouldn't you at least let them work in tandem?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how about
Like,
you?
why don't you
know,
stand
it's
guard
like,
on the wall?
like I don't know much about sports, but you typically have a goalie and a defensive. Like you don't just
Depends have- on which
Well,
team
and
you're
they
talking
already
about.
have the robots. They've got to build the wall. It's like, I don't know, maybe figure out a way to have the robots build the wall.
Yeah.
Like we've already.
Dan,
done
where were
these
you
things.
during this movie? You
Oh,
would've
I'm
been-
sorry.
There were a lot of little things like that I think you can excuse because of the type of the movie it was. Like there was one time when we obviously found that the main character and his brother, when they were doing the mind meld, what was that called again?
Oh, the
Drifting.
drift.
Drifting.
Drift,
when,
yeah.
when they were drifting, they obviously can feel each other's emotions and their pain and whatever else there is and access each other's memories. So later on in the movie, when he finally does the meld, the drifting, I should actually call it that now, with the main...
neural
with-
Sounds like Fast and Furious. though.
yeah, exactly. It's when he does the drift with the main female character. After they get done doing something, he asks her, "Are you okay? Or are you still here?" I mean, they're drifting together as one mind. He obviously knew what she was feeling or experiencing. I mean, just little things like that I picked up
Can
on. Like,
anybody remember their characters' names?
No.
there's
Riley.
Riley. I remember
The
Riley.
only reason
but
I remember
can't-
Riley is because the Australian guy made fun of his name.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I remember
The
his name.
Australian guy I kept calling Iceman.
Yeah.
I just started like making up names because I'm like, oh well.
They're like, my names are better anyway.
Was there Goose? Was Goose in there? Or?
They all just I was like, oh, that's the Iceman. Okay, cool.
you got to face it; they were all just vehicles to make these giant robots. And instead
I remember
of,
the robot's name.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of
Do
making,
they all have names or just Gypsy Danger? I only remember
Gypsy
that
Danger
one.
was when they kept calling by name.
Yeah.
I'm sure the other ones had it, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
there
The
was
other ones do. 'Cause there's
Clonko
posters
and-
on them,
Yeah,
with
they-
them.
3-arm guy.
They had to put some. They got to put something on that toy package.
Yeah, straight.
the other ones all have foreign language names, so I think that's why we don't remember what they are.
Because you're a xenophobe.
Ivan Drago, the Russian one.
Yeah, the Australian one was an Australian, and I don't speak that.
Yeah.
So,
I believe his name was Crikey.
Yeah. Oh.
I have to say
Steve
that
Irwin.
the fact that they didn't focus as much on these characters is an okay thing because really what you wanted to do is see
you don't
these giant.
care.
You just want to see these giant robots fight monsters, and so they gave you a little backstory to make it make sense. You didn't want to say, okay, these humans built robots, they took over, have a mind of their own. Now there's no humans, and the robots
See-
are just
Right.
fighting. You know,
This is where I get a little hypocritical. I I've dissed things like the Twilight series for so long because the main character is really just an empty shell for teenage girls to insert themselves
In
into.
their defense, in real life, she's an empty shell.
There's so many jokes
just
about
saying.
teenage girls being able to insert themselves into things.
But
God, first the mic joke, and now what's wrong with you?
Pacific Rim
trying to
is
get
pretty
listeners.
much the same thing with for teenage
Sure.
boys and oversized man boys like myself. But no, like I mean, like it's you basically you have empty shells that the audience can kind of insert themselves into and be like, what would it be like if I were piloting a giant mecha against an otherworldly threat
With my brother.
Yeah, the only human characters that have any sort of like way of propelling it forward is Charlie Day, and
Idris Elba.
Yeah, and his buddy Doctor.
Yeah.
And then they've got their kind of wacky hijinks off to the side, their little side quest thing going on.
They're what really kept it lighthearted.
They're the comic relief.
Yeah, they grounded it a bit.
I did feel though, and that like I felt like 80% of the dialogue in this movie was screamed. Like I just felt like there was a lot of yelling for no reason. Like some of the line readings were weird. I'm like, why are you yelling that? Like, is it really loud where you're filming? Or and
there's giant robots everywhere.
I can't hear you over the giant robot.
Yeah. And Charlie Day is like he's a big offender, and he does like tend to scream his punchlines in a lot of things.
That's
But
kind of his style.
yeah, but I felt like. When they edited the film, they kind of just grabbed those line
screamy
readings.
moments?
Yeah, like and so he got very screamy, even by his standards, and like by the end of the film, like he was really grating on my nerves with all the screaming. Like it was like that like a little bit of that goes a long way. And I've seen him in other things that I really liked him in. So I forget, he was in like some cheesy romantic comedy with Justin Long, I think, and he was like the highlight of it.
Oh yeah, with Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, where they were like a long distance relationship.
I
Might
can't
have been called
remember
long distance relationship. They don't put a lot of thought in these things. Who knows? But I liked him in that. Like he was a highlight of the film, and so it's not like I don't like the dude. But
now that I remember the film, yeah, he was the highlight.
Yeah, but yeah, I just felt like there was a lot of screaming for no apparent reason, just like forced drama. But and we talked, I think it was during Lone Ranger, we discussed about, is it time to retire the origin story? And so now it's my turn to be hypocritical, because when they blew through their origin story,
3 minutes.
I was like, whoa, wait, that sounds interesting. Back it up, flesh that out. And I guess when I say retire the origin story, it's like, I didn't need the origin story for Superman, because it's like he's the most well-known pop culture character of all time. Like, I think we
get it.
Yeah, we can get a 3-minute origin story on a Superman film, but on this, when they're telling their origin story, and also their origin story sounded like it had a lot of action in it. So it's like, it's not like it's not like a Lucasfilm where the backstory is like 18 hours of congressional debates and and Machiavellian moves behind the scenes and treaties, and it was like no, there was monsters destroying stuff and killing people. Sign me up. Show me that.
We're really sorry about that bombing. We really need your help to build this robot, please.
Yeah, there's some technology. The whole drifting thing. I mean, I kept going back like, wait a minute, how does that work again? So
they don't really
there's
explain
two
that.
of them, but if one,
I guess they
got
said
a big headache and their nose bleeds.
Yeah, they said like one. They said
Wait.
one person couldn't handle it by themselves,
Right.
And I guess they killed people while they were trying to figure that out, and then they put the two together.
They put the two together, and they're in a giant version of Dance Dance Revolution.
Right? Yeah, totally. I was thinking the same.
Robot powered.
Did they say that like
Wonder Twin
all of their
powers.
pilots were brothers or related?
No, they
Is that
just said they
into
had to
that?
be drift compatible.
Right.
So,
But most of them were.
but most of them
Were
were
relatives.
related.
I think if you were related, it increased the likelihood of drift compatibility, and that's why you saw brothers or triplets or
father and son.
Father and son.
Wait a minute. So those Russians, I thought they were a couple.
That's what I
What's
thought, too.
happening?
Well, probably.
in
Maybe
were
Russia?
they? I didn't
Maybe they were both.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sorry to all of our Russian listeners.
That totally changed it for me.
Yeah. Maybe they were. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's. I think that's totally the sort of
could've
thing
been
that he would
brother and
do.
sister,
That Del
Yeah.
Toro, like I think he would be like that would make sense, especially when the non-related couple that we see drift end up becoming romantically linked.
There you go.
Do they, or do they just give a hug?
I think it was
A sexy hug.
a sexy hug, like,
Robot powered hug.
See, I
A
think
drift powered
There's,
hug.
I feel a drift in my pants.
There it is.
Why do I always have to follow these lines? So I'm on the other side of the fence there. I think that if they would have delved into the origin story too much, I wouldn't have cared, because I wasn't there to, in this type of movie, I wasn't there to learn their backstory. We got over 2 hours of hard-hitting action, and they kind of breezed past it because I think it didn't matter in this instance. So I really think it would have been boring. We would be like, get to the giant robots fighting giant monsters in this case.
And I get why they did it. I think, though, with the glimpse of the origin story that we saw, I felt like it did have action in it. I mean, because the origin story, the first part of it is robots come up and start tearing up the joint.
You got that really cool opening sequence where is it the Golden Gate Bridge? Is that the opening sequence?
Yeah.
You get, that was a cool scene.
But they do show it. They don't just talk about it.
No,
Like in After Earth, when the only cool thing that's in the script is off screen.
Did you see After Earth?
Oh, yeah. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was you and like 20 people?
Yeah.
Nationwide.
I think if Hollywood hadn't gotten a hold of this as an origin story, though, the movie would have been completely dull, because I don't feel like they know how to do an origin story and move past it quickly. It would have been like an hour of scientists talking about, no, we got to do this, and like while like time's ticking down, and all of a sudden at the last moment, a Jaeger rises up out of the ashes from something and just like destroys them, and it would have been boring that way. I would have liked maybe a few more minutes about it, but yeah.
I guess the only reason I think that it might not have been boring is because it's Guillermo del Toro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and he created a very rich world. I mean, as much as I'm kind of on the movie, there were a lot of like little details and stuff going on, or the whole thing about how they harvested the organs. Like, that's a whole like crazy subplot that I don't think most big budget summer tentpole films would include. And when you go into that that kind of underworld seedy town when he's looking for Ron Perlman's character, whatever that Chow, yeah,
Mr. Chow.
But like that whole world, I was like, well, this is kind of fascinating. Like, so it was like he clearly, like, I really feel like somewhere he's got a notebook where, even though we might not have seen it on the screen, like, he had kind of mapped out the way actors will like create a whole backstory for their character that never makes it to the screen.
He's kind of known for doing a lot of like math beforehand. And I think it shows in this. I mean, even like when they were hooking up the Jaeger pilots and that little spinal column thing, I was like, I kind of want to know more about that. And it did make me think the whole time. I was like, I hope they talk about this stuff on the Blu-ray just as extras, because there was, like, I think production design-wise, there's a lot of, I'm with you on this. I think there was a lot of stuff I was like, that's kind of cool theoretically.
Yeah, I think he was trying. I feel like he was trying to build a world where if this movie was a big enough hit, and it kind of looks like it's probably not going to be, but had the movie been a big enough hit that it could have sustained a series of novels or comic books like Star Wars or Alien.
There is actually. There will be a graphic novel. I don't know who's putting. Well, I'm assuming it's DC since it's Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
That is putting out a Pacific Rim graphic novel
with a new story or a film adaptation.
And it's a prequel, so you
Yes.
will
Okay,
learn.
so it is a new thing. Okay.
So you're gonna learn all that stuff
there
in the
you go.
comic,
Go
which
put
is
in your
cool.
pre-order.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go to your local comic book shops.
And I was gonna say they're doing this prequel, but this is an original script, right? They created this world from scratch.
Yep.
It's not an adaptation.
Nope.
I mean, I
Right.
know they obviously are gonna borrow
They
things
pulled from stuff, yeah.
but yeah, this is the first Pacific Rim property.
Yeah. So I like I said, I like the world that they were trying to build, and I did find it interesting, even though overall I was meh on the film. But I did.
Yeah.
I wish I would have liked to have seen them delve more into that, because it looked.
Well, even
That's
like
what made the film different from other.
Hannibal Chow's like lair, which was built around like the rib cage of.
It wasn't like a skull.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, that's just. I mean, that they used parts of the kaiju for structure within the city. I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, so there were certain things I was like, I want to see more of that.
Yeah, there were a lot of like little neat flourishes like that.
Yeah.
I also liked a couple of the Star Wars references in the.
Don't get cocky.
Don't get cocky, kid.
And
I
there was a
bet.
side swipe.
There was
from scene to scene.
And I also
early on.
kind of think Blake and I kind of went back and forth this for a second. The initial Jaeger suits, if you look at them, they are very reminiscent of a stormtrooper.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I just think it's a white armor, so that's why I don't think
it could
it's
be,
an
but I
homage.
thought
'Cause there's
you don't
way
see that
more-
until after they deliver that line. You see the suits.
There's
So I just
plenty. There's plenty of closer designs in animes and stuff. For
The-
Yeah,
the
I
Stormtrooper
and Stormtrooper.
do ultimately think the suit thing is probably just a bit of confirmation bias, just because,
Yeah.
like, why would he take the heroes of his film and dress them in the costumes of the villains.
Yeah.
Sometimes they weren't bad guys. They initially weren't bad guys.
They were just doing their job.
They're just doing their job.
Yeah, but perceptually, there were Nazis that were just doing their job.
They just didn't do it very well.
They
just didn't do it well. They couldn't find robots and they couldn't shoot a princess. So,
they could not to save their life.
I missed. Sorry.
I found an interesting article online from Popular Mechanics that I thought we would enjoy. And they were kind enough to go through and kind of plot out exactly how the Pentagon would destroy monsters.
Oh, good.
For a movie like Pacific Rim
Outstanding.
actually to occur.
Do you think they have this plan in place? Is this a real...
You mean it's like the zombie plan that they have?
Oh, I think Bush did, but Obama doesn't. But it's actually pretty interesting. He's in this article of I was going to say his name, but now I don't know how. Joe Papalardo. I feel like that might have been
Joe Papalardo. I'm pretty sure I ate at this restaurant.
Suddenly, I'm a lot less confident in this article. But he says, first off, you don't go toe-to-toe with them on the ground. The infantry should be reserved for evacuations, crowd control, and to preserve civil order.
Did they fire shots in that movie? Were they firing shots from the ground at those things?
I think at one point they were. I
think
it was early.
I was like, you idiot.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
never work.
Yeah, but in their world, it hasn't happened before. We're watching it as film goers. They're living it. If something comes in, you're going to shoot at it.
If we get attacked by kaiju in real life, don't fire your guns at them.
Correct. That's what this says. It says once it's been shown that the animal's hide is too thick for bullets and shoulder-fired rockets, which is always the case, you should withdraw the soldiers and Marines from the front lines, and that a tank should be a fine monster-killing machine. The M1A1 Abrams, it's fast with a top speed of 45 miles an hour. It can get to where the monster is at pretty quickly, and the tank can be sealed from chemical and biological threats outside, so you wouldn't have to worry about their blood, which was an issue in the film. And so it said that should always be a priority when dealing with an unknown species. But that, as we will see in most of these movies, the beast will still end up shrugging these off like pinpricks. And even though the tanks are tough, they're not designed to withstand the crushing force of a 300-foot tall dinosaur stomping on them. It would, at the very least, destroy the suspension.
At the very least.
At the very least, it would destroy the suspension.
You know how much those things cost?
Yeah. I think at that point, money's not the issue. Money's about to become worthless in this
Car
world.
X isn't open during an apocalypse. So.
Yeah.
You're straight.
Yeah, can you get the Carfax on a used M1A1 Abrams? It says the Army could play a role in the fight, but only in the air. He recommends the AH-64 Apache helicopters, that they would be adept monster hunters, except most of their arms are too light, and that the advantage is that a helicopter can stay out of range for the sensitive spot and aim for the sensitive spots on the beast, like their eyes, mouths, gills, depending on what you're fighting. So here's his tactic. You use the Apaches to get the monster's attention, and you draw them out of the cities, and that would enable the other services to take a crack at killing it. And it says that then he recommends B-52 Stratofortress. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
I'm not very...
What you don't know is that is the Shield helicarrier. No, it's really not.
No.
Wait a minute.
He says that is the most fitting option. It says the B-52 was introduced into the Air Force fleet just a year after Godzilla made his on-screen debut. Coincidence? I think not.
You know when they built that airplane, they're like, holy shit, that could happen.
We gotta take out some Godzillas,
some Godzilla monsters.
So
if Mothra shows up, we're screwed.
So he says the problem with B-52s is that it takes too long to get to their target, and when a monster is flattening a city, every second equals tens of millions of dollars in damage. So here's the plan. Apache helicopters enrage the creature with chain guns and missiles from an acceptable standoff range, and then they could also pop up from behind buildings and hills, take their shots, and dip down again. And then once the creature is coaxed into an open area, troops on the ground paint it with lasers. The B-1s overhead drop their full load. I was waiting for Joe to make another joke because you're Mr. Dirty Pants.
I don't have to. You did that one on your own.
The B-1s overhead drop their full load of precision bombs on the thing, and then Lancers can carry the Blue 109. Did I say that right, or do I say the letters? BLU 109 penetrating bombs. Penetrating anything, Joe?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, the blue and the penetrating speaks for itself.
Yes. You need a moment alone?
Nope.
Okay. Do they at least cuddle the monster afterwards?
It says that they drop these penetrating bombs that can burrow into the bunker before exploding, and then they would burrow into the hide of the beast and detonate. So, and it says giant robots may be cool, but we can handle the monsters just fine when they lumber on the land. If they stay at sea, they can stay there as long as they behave. Our submarines would be no match for native-born swimmers with a bad attitude. So it sounds like we do.
So our armed
have
forces has a better
plans.
idea of how to protect life than Superman did.
Weird. You said it.
No,
You said it.
But, hey, I was going to bring that point up later. I'm like, if anybody complains about the loss of life in the Man of Steel, don't go see Pacific Rim.
But in Pacific Rim, they evacuate people.
Right.
Yeah.
And they address
they evacuate people in Man of Steel, too.
Yeah. And my complaint, making the comparison between the two, is that Man of Steel is like he's presented as like this hero who saved all these people when really while he's saving people, he was probably killing tens of thousands, where he was basically just saving the people that have names in the script. And where in this movie they address that, where he tells the guy at the beginning, like, don't go save that boat. There's only 15 people on it. You're protecting a city of 10 million or whatever. So so they do kind of address the fact. I mean, they don't dwell on it because it's not Schindler's List, but they do address the fact that there are a lot of innocent people being killed by these things, and probably by the fights that they're having with these things. But I also get that you don't dwell on it because that's not the type of movie you're making. But it just felt a little bit more hypocritical.
It's
in Man of
different.
Steel. Yeah.
Now, in that report, like you said, that you were reading, they drew the people away. And Tom and I had a conversation about this the other day about always having the monsters fight at sea, and it was dark and all that stuff. I thought, the way it was written made sense. I mean, I know that you could say, okay, it's a little easier to hide the CGI not being realistic when you're out in the middle of nowhere, not in the broad daylight. But as far as them going to see where the monsters were coming from, I think that would happen. You want to draw them away from the city. You want to take the fight to them, or else you're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in damage and people dying, and you have to really take it out to the sea. That's why the helicopters in the movie would take them out to the monsters, and drop them off there.
Or you want to keep them in the sea. Like,
yeah.
I think, isn't there...
Actually...
Did they try to defend
Now
the
that you
borders?
mention that, I have another article where and I don't remember where found this one from, but it's an interview with an engineer and how an engineer sees a Jaeger, and they actually discuss the whole ocean thing, and they say that the things would have to stay near shore or be fully submersible, that engines need air and fuel to run on. So if it's
Not to mention that salt water just would.
Yeah, so if it's running engines to power the
use out of
hydraulics for muscles, it can't go underwater unless it has massive air and gasoline diesel storage tanks. Then consider the corrosion effects of salt water, and there are some processes that treat metal to be corrosion resistant for 500 hours in salt spray testing. But as anyone who has shipped metal that's not treated from China knows, it's covered in rust when it hits the port. And then it goes on to say, and I think this is probably an even more important factor, anyone who stepped in mud can also attest that it doesn't support much weight. So I'm pretty sure these things would sink to the bottom of the ocean and crumble the concrete they stand on.
Or they have a giant fight.
Jumping and running or walking obviously increases the pressure too. So
Man, the tech report from Tommy Fun Spoiler.
I know, right?
I Debbie Downer.
You wanted us to spoil stuff, man, and I am here to spoil it. And honestly, like from a film standpoint, like I don't care. It's robots fighting monsters.
Right,
It's
exactly.
Just, I'm not truly like criticizing the movie for this. But
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get into physics,
But I just found this interesting that it's like, yeah, they would just kind of sink in the mud, wouldn't they?
It's like Superman saving that plane would just fit on physics, like on Superman
Returns.
would just go straight through the plane because they're like it would be like putting a needle through a tissue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I mean, like you can't do things like that with movies like this. Like everyone knows it's not realistic.
Well,
it's never gonna happen.
even the famous cover of Action Comics #1, where he's holding the car up, like it would just the car couldn't support its own weight. It's not about his strength; it's about the strength of the car. Although I don't know, like a 38 Etzel
no,
might
it could
very well support its own weight.
Those things were pretty strong.
They were like tanks.
Yeah, nowadays maybe not so much. Maybe that was true back then. I retract.
Did anyone notice, by the way, when we were talking about the destruction, that at one point it's either one of the monsters or one of the Jaegers is thrown through a building, and you can hear screams of people as they're being thrown through the building?
No.
It's awesome. Like I noticed that where like you just heard like a few like faint screams or whatever as they were getting sent through like the side of a building, and I'm like, wow, they really went there.
Yeah. But I like that because I think, especially in a post 9/11 world, it kind of insults our intelligence at this point to pretend like there's no collateral damage. That being said, like I don't necessarily want to see that in this movie in any real depth, but it almost feels crass to not acknowledge it. And that's honestly that was like one of the things I really liked about Cloverfield. Like I I really liked how Cloverfield dug into
I forgot about that movie.
like it was. I remember at the time I wasn't reviewing movies, but I used this line, and another person that does reviews movies asked if they could steal it, and but I was like, it was like Godzilla from the point of view of the extras, and I loved that it's like, what would it be like if you're the guy on the ground? Because normally when you watch these movies, it's all about the military or the hero that no one will listen to, and he has to charge ahead and he will save the day. But most of us would be like running through the streets covered in our own shit and piss. Like that's how that would work, right?
Do you ever see that monster? Do you see that monster full on?
Briefly at the end, but
very end.
But but
Otherwise
even
you
then,
see limbs and stuff.
Right. Okay.
But I love that it was kind of like Jaws in that regard. That it was like they kept hiding it from you, and it was a very tense movie.
The only reason
I really
they hid
enjoyed
it from Jaws is because of the salt water. We would, if that shark worked, we would have seen a lot more of that shark.
Absolutely, if that shark worked, it would.
Thank God it didn't work.
Yeah, totally, and that's a great example of when a director turns a problem into a solution, which is why he's Spielberg. You know, but it's
he would have an entirely different career right now. If Bruce the Shark would have worked.
Have you seen that documentary?
Yeah.
Oh,
it would also be interesting, and I know he would never do it, but I would love to see his version.
His version of it working.
His version, like go make Jaws now.
I agree.
CG Jaws,
just do it for sci-fi or something like that.
Jaws 5.
What would it look like if he didn't have to hold back and like find little end runs, and because he basically ended up making a summer movie Hitchcock film.
It was I mean, a lot of it's John Williams on that.
Totally.
If he hadn't come up with the theme, the two notes.
And and they re-edited that movie to the theme. Normally they edit the film and then they just sync the theme around it. And like when he gave them the theme, it was so good he went and re-edited the film so it would sync up with his music instead of the other way around, which says a lot about that music.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Did you guys remember, Tom and I had a discussion about the ending of the movie. Now we can actually get into some spoilers. We haven't talked about much in the means of actual spoilers.
But this is interesting, though, because this is a movie that I don't feel like there's a whole lot to spoil. I mean, is there any doubt they're going to win? Did you have any doubt
I think you lose a major character. That's about it, though.
Anyway, my point is that at the end of the movie, the way that they take care of the threat, does anyone remember if the original Jaeger that Idris Elba pilots was nuclear powered? Because I thought only Gypsy Danger was nuclear powered.
Only the ones from his from that Mark program. So he's Mark II or whatever.
Mark II,
and then Mark I was not, but they were single pilots. Mark II were the double pilots and nuclear powered, and they're the last Mark II according to the movie.
And I think Idris Elba was a Mark I.
Yeah. And I think you're misremembering the conversation that we had off the air, where my question was, I thought that the bomb they were carrying was nuclear. That initial,
it is.
So okay, so that was a nuclear bomb.
That's my point. We were just trying to figure out, because the way that they try to take care of the monsters and they were fighting them is they set off this bomb, which is nuclear. Now that we've confirmed that, and Tom was saying, well, wouldn't that create a giant tsunami
that would just kill all these people?
No, because they do it in their.
No, we're talking about the
first
bomb.
The second bomb, or when they detonate the nuclear version of Gypsy Danger, they turn it into a bomb. That happens like within the portal or whatever. So like, I'll totally buy that. There's no shockwave effect because it's on the other side of that dimension, and like, okay, I'm good with that. But that first bomb, I would think would probably kind of
the one in the Australian.
Depends on how big the bomb is. I mean,
but if it's
ocean's really big. I mean,
but so are nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of little nuclear bombs. Like the whole point of a nuclear bomb is to do as much damage as humanly possible.
Didn't the water actually come up out of the ocean, and they were walking around like it was land?
Yeah, all the fish were dropping.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So if that would come down and create,
and then the wave came back.
I'm thinking like you would have a tsunami.
They stopped
tsunami of biblical proportions.
They stopped them.
It was the wall. The wall stopped the tsunami.
Yeah.
Just interesting. I missed that the bomb.
I don't think a nuclear device would displace as much water as tectonic shifts and things like that cause tsunamis, though. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of miles of land moving to create tsunamis. You're talking about a mile radius. I mean, it would make some big waves.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be a tsunami.
But it creates that ripple effect. Like, I don't know. We need to get these engineering guys on that.
God damn it, we stopped the apocalypse. That's all that matters.
And again, I loved the movie.
We didn't stop it. We just canceled it.
Yeah, we just canceled it. I'm sorry, we canceled it.
That's not a deal breaker for me at all. Just curious.
And if you've ever dealt with Ticketmaster, the cancellation fees on apocalypse are outrageous. It is like Jim. It is truly outrageous.
One thing I liked about the movie that was a sense of one-upsmanship with itself, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but the evolution of the kaiju, like
at first they were sort of
Excuse
generic.
me, Dan. The creationism of the kaiju.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes. Well,
Whichever you prefer.
So as they change, you notice that all of a sudden one kind of turned into a bat, and I'm like, oh, it's a bat one. And then there was clearly a gorilla one towards the end. I was like, oh, I kind of like that they were not keeping with a generic kaiju form factor.
And I'm so jaded. I'm like, oh, I kind of like that they're gonna have all these different toys to sell us.
Yeah.
What was there the main one that took out the last two Jaegers? It wasn't the gorilla one, and it wasn't the bat. It was almost like a lizard.
There was a lizard, and there was one that was sort of like a hybrid of I don't know if it was a lizard and squid.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
It was a huge one, right? It was the biggest,
Yeah.
baddest one ever, right, for the showdown.
Yep.
It's always the biggest bad.
You gotta go to a class 5 or whatever it was.
When you're starting an attack like that, you never lead with your strongest creature.
And
That's all we got.
They drop that. They drop you. They tell you that. They're like, these were just scouts. We're screwed.
Yeah, these are just the baby ones.
Yeah.
So,
we haven't seen the big ones yet.
It's funny as we get to the tail end of this discussion. It's funny how sometimes critics will just decide collectively to give a movie a pass on stuff that on other movies they would tear apart, and we've talked about that a little bit today, even how we've done that.
Absolutely.
And on previous movies. So over at BuzzFeed, I don't know if anybody's seen this. They did this article of pull quotes. Have you seen this, Blake?
No.
You're kind of lighting up. Okay. And what they did, and we'll go around the room. We'll have you guys guess. I already know the answer, so I can't guess. But and what this is they've taken pull quotes from various reviews, and I'm going to read you a quote, and then you will get to decide whether this is from a positive review of Pacific Rim or a negative review of a Transformers movie. And,
Awesome.
And you'll get extra bonus points if you can guess the actual Transformers movie. So here's the thing. These quotes, if it's about Pacific Rim, they liked Pacific Rim, and if it's from Transformers, they did not like Transformers. But you will find that the quotes are oddly similar.
And this is from all 3 Transformers movies.
Yeah, it could be from any of the 3 Transformers movies. Okay, number 1, we'll start with Joe. Adjust expectations and enjoy the big, dumb brawl. Positive Pacific Rim or negative Transformers?
I'm going to take a positive Pacific Rim.
Nice.
Yeah.
You got it. There you go. Okay, we'll just circle around the room. Dan?
Yes.
Audiences are liable to be in a state of utter bewilderment.
I'm going to say negative for Transformers, and I'm going to say Revenge of the Fallen.
It was Transformers 1. Damn. But you did get the Transformers part right.
So
okay.
close.
Blake, this one's for you.
Pressure.
Why did this consummate labor of love have to be so dumb, so clunky, and hollow, and poorly acted? Why does it feel so incomplete?
Oh, wow.
That is a heartfelt review right there.
That sounds like a trick question to me.
Yeah.
Blake's like, why did I get the hard one?
God. Yeah, I'm going to go with, Labor of Love makes me think Pacific Rim. Cause
Is that your final answer?
I guess
You gonna lock in?
Yeah, I'm locking in.
Yeah.
Wait, I want to phone a friend real quick.
Yeah.
I think any friends you have are in the room. So, no, you got it correct. It is Pacific Rim. It was Pacific Rim, and I think Labor of Love was the key there. Okay, up next for Kevin. Who cares about silly things like logic and sharp dialogue? Negative Transformers, positive Pacific Rim.
Can you read it in the context that they said it? I'm going to say that it's a positive Pacific Rim.
It is a positive Pacific Rim. It's just so funny that these are positive reviews and they're saying like some awful things. Okay, coming back around to Joe.
Yes.
A carnival of top drawer special effects.
Oh, it's... Man. That sounds like a positive Pacific Rim.
Is that what you're going with, sir?
No, I'm going to say a negative Transformers.
It is a negative Transformers. Get extra points. You want to guess which Transformers?
Oh, what were you? One more time?
Oh, hang on. I just turned.
Sorry.
Carnival of top drawer special effects.
Yes, a carnival of top drawer special effects from Dan with the photograph.
They must not enjoy carnivals.
No,
because
Jesus. I'm going to go with Revenge of the... Wait, what was the third one? Dark Side of the Moon?
Dark Side of the Moon.
Dark of the Moon.
Dark of the Moon?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going with.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oof.
That was the best of the 3. I think.
After we shit on the second one, I figured it was probably the third one.
Okay, Dan knows what sort of film it wishes to be. It is that film and much more.
I want to say positive Pacific Rim.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Blake.
That sounded pretty positive.
It does. That's actually positive. Like that one's not ironic.
I would hope that would be in a positive review.
Transformers knew what it wanted to be, and it was great.
Yeah.
I hated it.
5-star review on Amazon.com.
In your face, BuzzFeed.
Okay, Blake. Kids may just love this film, but for adults, there's not much of a story.
Negative Transformers.
Correct. Want to guess which one?
Revenge of the Fallen.
No, it was the first one.
Oh, man.
Okay, Kevin, you're up. If I were 9 years old, I would see it 50 times.
Well, that one's a tough one.
That is a tough one. That could go a lot of ways.
That could
Because that could be a backhanded compliment of like, this is awful. If I was
This is for
9, I
children.
loved it. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Transformers 2.
Sorry, it is Positive Pacific Rim.
Oh,
so close.
That was
It
a tough
did
one.
sound
That was a tough
negative.
one.
I
That
guess-
was a tough one. I'll
yeah.
give you that. Okay, Joe, back around to you.
Yes.
It turns up the volume to 11 and the IQ to -1.
All right.
I'm gonna say a negative Transformers 2.
3.
3.
Damn.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Up next for Dan here. This is a long quote.
Oh.
This is maybe the longest quote we have. So hang on. Like going to one of those chain all-you-can-eat buffet restaurants. The potatoes may be overbaked, the green beans limp, and the beef lukewarm, but no way are you walking out of there hungry.
I'm going to say Positive Pacific Rim.
It is a negative Transformers.
Really?
review.
Oh.
What?
I know. Like
Which one?
Transformers 2.
Because that was a piece of money.
That was an awful.
That was the worst.
It
by
had
far.
balls. Why?
And characters that showed that the Transformers had a rich and storied history of minstrelsy. Like I was just like
Mud flapping skin.
I was like, what is going on here?
What?
Are
Does
these
he-
robots named Shuck and Jive?
Yeah.
Is there a
Does that robot have a gold tooth?
yeah? It's like
Does it make any
it's a
sense?
robotic step and fetch it.
Why is everybody laughing?
Okay, Blake, your turn. Sensory overload is the order of the day. It is packing a punch with its bold and bright color palette, sheer size, and mega volume.
Oh, that's Positive Pacific Rim.
Yeah, that was a pretty easy one. That
That's
was
simple.
very positive.
Child's Play, Tom.
Yes.
Child's Play.
Okay, up next for you, Kevin. No one presumes to apply artistic criteria to the site of a high-rise being demolished.
Sounds like a Transformers quote to me.
Yes, it is a Transformers.
And I am going to say 2.
No, it was 1 actually.
They really didn't like the first one. I'm surprised.
So, yeah, that's I didn't really care for the first one either. I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it like at home, so maybe that would have played a role. Like it's easier to get.
I think the big screen actually helped it.
Yeah, because it's a big movie,
You
so
know.
you're gonna.
And it was pre the whole 3D craze, so it was sort of.
That's true.
I don't know. I mean, on the Transformers movies, that's the only one I liked. The
Really?
second one just was horrific.
I liked all that stuff at the beginning with Kennedy and the moon, and like
Yeah.
I was like,
that was all cool.
They actually kind
in
of
my
put some thought
defense,
into this.
I saw a less than savory version of the third one, and there was a lot of people walking back and forth on the in front of the screen, and there was like this little Russian kid with I think tuberculosis coughing on the side. So maybe if I watched a better version of it,
might
more
wanna borrow my
pristine
Blu-ray.
version of it, but
It's on Netflix.
At that time, I was like, oh God, what's going on?
Yeah,
It's
and maybe
streaming on Netflix right now.
it's another example too of like I went to a movie with such low expectations after Transformers 2.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I was just like dreading that
Transformers
film.
2 killed any expectation I had for the third one, so it
Horrible.
ended up making me like it quite a bit more.
I'll stand by it and say I think the third one was an excellent action movie. I really don't have a lot of qualms with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think I enjoyed it a little bit more because literally like a half a week before I saw it, where they do the final battle scene in Chicago, that's Hotel 71 is where I was staying like 3 or 4 days before I saw the movie.
Yeah.
And that's one of the major set pieces in the movie, and I'm like, I was just there. I was at the site of a Transformers battle.
I know one of the things I couldn't stand about Transformers 2 is that like the camera never stopped moving. Like they could just be standing there having a conversation, and the camera is circling them
Was
and
that-
swooping up and down. And
was that the
under
peak
them
of the circle camera? Is that one of those
There's a
movies when
lot
that
of
was really
circle
popular?
camera.
It like just did
Like on a
not
gyroscope.
stop.
That's what it looked like.
It was bad.
They
so-
spent a lot of money on steady cams and dollies. They got to get their worth.
Okay, Joe.
Yes.
The adult in me might wonder how beings from another universe don't blink out of existence, entering one with entirely different cosmic constants But then the kid in me says to myself, "Shut up, brain! Giant robots."
I think that's. See, I think he's trying
That's
to
a
throw you
tough
on
one.
this
That's
one.
a tough one. How do beings... Say it one more time.
Okay, the adult in me might wonder how beings from another universe don't blink out of existence, entering one with entirely different cosmic constants. But then the kid in me says to myself, "Shut up, brain! Giant robots."
That is a negative Transformers.
It is a positive.
Positive Pacific Rim. Damn it.
I'm really
I'm-
impressed that
I'm
someone
three-
had
I'm 3 for 1.
cosmic constant in their
Yeah.
in their.
I think
film
that it must
review.
be a Mike Nesmith fan because I think he's got a son that uses the phrase "cosmic constant." Okay, this is Dan.
Yeah.
Big, dumb, and loud in all the very best ways.
Oh. See, I think you're trying to stump me now.
Not me, it's
And-
BuzzFeed.
Well,
Honestly,
so far,
BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed can suck it. I'm going to say negative Transformers.
Sorry, it was positive Pacific Rim. Sorry. Okay, Blake.
All right, let's do this.
A big budget, effects heavy feature film version of a Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, well, Jesus.
Well, that'd be a negative Transformers.
Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, Kevin.
That was your what is your favorite color question.
Yeah. Blue, no red. True epic filmmaking, but its enormity actually undermines its cumulative impact.
I'm going to say that's Pacific Rim.
It is Transformers.
You suck at this game.
Yeah. Would you like to make up ground by
I have a
guessing
bonus
which Transformers?
That will be. I'm going to say 2 again.
No, it was 3.
That's the worst
There's a
one. How do these people?
Okay,
I don't know. Yeah.
but see, all of this comes back around to not. I think it's getting a pass, or at least I know it's getting a pass from me.
Absolutely.
And I don't know about you guys. It's getting a pass because I do feel that there's a fondness and a genuine, love for those things that inspire the movie. And Transformers did not have that.
Transformers also had like kind of a calculated feel of what's going to market the best to
Absolutely.
like 15-year-olds.
But obviously, Pacific Rim is not being marketed well.
I think
you know.
I think Michael Bay. Who produced that? What company put that out?
Paramount.
Paramount.
Yeah,
They knew they could make money,
absolutely.
and I think that's
That's kind of why they're in the business.
yeah.
no. But I mean, like they used that. There was no love behind that project
Yeah.
because they're like,
No.
we're just going to make money off of it. Where Pacific Rim, you felt some genuine emotion from the filmmakers and from the producers that like we want to make a good movie. They screwed the pooch on that one. This is our love letter to the Transformers and to all of the manga influence and anime.
Well, nothing strikes heart into the fear of a critic more than the phrase "based on an idea from Hasbro." Like, that is frightening. There's one more, but it's very easy. So, Joe, you just get it. It's the way it happened. No giant robots urinate on humans in Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Oh, well, I'm gonna say it's a positive
I think
Pacific
Rim. BuzzFeed got a little lazy on that last. So before we head out, Dan, do you have a video recovery for us?
I do actually. Since we're talking about Guillermo and his, fondness for all things big and monstrous, he did a movie in 1997. It's actually his first American film called Mimic. The interesting story behind Mimic is when it came out, it was a Miramax film. And if you know anything about Miramax, back in the day, Bob and Harvey Weinstein, they were a little, let's say, heavy-handed with how they managed a film set and a production company. Anyway, Bob Weinstein basically called for cuts that Guillermo did not agree with, and Guillermo more or less distanced himself from the film. He didn't take his name off of it, but he pulled back and sort of disowned it.
Right.
And it's because a lot of what is seen in the 1997 version is a lot of the second unit stuff. So it's the cheap scares and, it's just, and there's the musical cues, and it's kind of a not very good movie. It deals with, it's got Mira Sorvino as the lead, and Josh Brolin, who looks really, really young in this. It's like, did he just leave the Goonies set for this?
It's weird that it wasn't that long ago, but he looks like a kid.
Oh my God, he looks like a baby in this.
It's over 15 years ago. That's kind of
it's and
He looks old now compared to that.
He got some road miles on you.
and a special appearance by F. Murray Abraham, and I'm like, I don't think this is all that special.
Right.
But, special appearance. I think they were trying to put like Academy Award winner F. Murray Abraham. I was like, yeah, he was as good as
Do you
Salieri.
think you have to pay an actor extra to use to sell them that way?
I think maybe they did
Because they don't always do it. They only do it on certain movies.
It was odd.
I'm sure the agent or it was in their contract
Yeah.
for my appearance in the movie. Instead of getting first or last
Right.
billing, I get a special appearance.
spot.
No, what I meant is, do you have to pay them extra to refer to them as Academy Award winner, or do they not want to lessen that on a movie like Mimic? And so they say, no, you can't bill me as Academy Award winner. You have, I'm saving that for when I pop up in a prestige picture.
Yeah, in case I get another one.
Right.
Because this might happen. So anyway, the movie involves, there's a lot of kids being, dying from something called Strickler's disease.
So it's a comedy
in New York. It is musical comedy, in fact. And so Mira Sorvino plays a genetic engineer who creates a hybrid bug that will essentially wipe out the disease is being spread by a cockroach. So this eliminates is interesting because they don't really touch on it yet. Pretty much eliminates the cockroach population in New York.
Hey, so there's an upside.
So there's an upside.
To all the dead
and the
kids.
kids get better and everything's great. And then about 3 years later, they realize that those bugs, which were supposed to be, this is taking a little bit of a page from Michael Crichton from Jurassic Park. The bugs apparently were supposed to be female and they were supposed to have like a limited shelf life. Well, they evolved, and
most females do.
As it happens, and a man evolved out of that. A transgender popped up. And it's called Mimic because they evolved in a way that sort of disguises themselves as overcoat wearing men. So they disguised in plain sight by having like an outer shell that looks like a dude in an overcoat. So like
when the little rascals pretended to be adults.
like when they're stacked up on each other. So I mean, and this sounds absolutely stupid, but it kind of had an interesting premise. Well, after Miramax and the Weinsteins parted ways, and Guillermo was a fairly big name, Miramax approached him and said, "Hey, would you be interested, for the Blu-ray of doing a director's cut?" And he's like, "Yeah, I would." Because his name was pretty hot at the time,
Right.
and it still is.
Yeah.
So he went back and they inserted his scenes. They took out some scenes. It's only like 6-7 minutes longer. But the tone of the movie is substantially different. It's a lot slower and a little more character-driven.
Right.
That's
It's
right.
still overcoat
that's
wearing.
in his wheelhouse. That's what he does.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny how much like one little thing can change the whole tone of a movie.
Totally
For
changes it.
instance, and this is why like I make a point to like I very rarely will drink a beverage in a movie because I don't want to have to get them pee during.
Yeah.
Especially as I get older, it just happens. But
Is that what I have to look forward to?
yeah, it is, sadly.
I'm actually peeing now.
I remember I went to a screening of Spider-Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't reviewing films at the time.
I
so
got up and left because I didn't have to pee. I just got
yeah,
up and left.
and I got up and I had to pee, and I ended up peeing during the dance scene.
Oh, Jesus.
And so like that was like that was the nail in the coffin for people on that
Yeah,
film, right? And so
absolutely.
like I totally missed the dance scene. And so afterwards my friends were like, "Oh, how was the Spider-Man 3?" I'm like, "It wasn't great, but it was okay." And then they came back having seen it and they were like, "What the hell is wrong with you?"
I don't know you anymore.
And I was like, "What?" I mean, like it wasn't great, but I'm like, they should have never used Venom because his origin just can make no sense outside of Secret Wars, but okay.
Right.
But I was just like, it fell victim to the Batman franchise of too many villains.
Ultimate Venom could work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I was just like, what? I'm like, but it was okay. And when I went back and rewatched it, and then I saw the dance scene, I was like, oh, sweet baby Jesus, how did I not know this? This is awful. Yeah. So that was my lesson learned. Luckily, before I started reviewing films publicly, that don't pee during a movie, unless I've already gone so far off the rails that it's a piece of crap that nothing's going to save it.
I was so angry during that movie.
This is and this is definitely an example of that. Like it tonally changes. It's a little bit slower and a little bit deeper. It's still not a
contemplative.
Yes.
What year was The Devil's Backbone?
Funny you should say.
Oh.
So the reason this is really important is because it kind of tanked and didn't do well, and so he only had done a series of shorts and maybe one. He did Kronos before this, so he did Mimic, and then it was kind of like, oh, okay. So he went back to more self-reflective work and turned around and did Devil's Backbone, which honestly, if that's a result of his experience with Mimic, great.
Yeah, what a awesome movie
because that put him on the path that where he is now. This guy he's pretty solid. And you can see it there,
right.
And it's kind of interesting, just to see that because of studio meddling.
Right.
What was kind of an interesting idea that was just a sloppy B movie. This turns into it's still got the sort of his fetishist gooiness.
Yeah.
There's that like in every movie there's something like just gooey where you're like, what is that?
I was gonna say that if you're not a fan of bugs, you
Don't watch
probably
Mimic.
will not enjoy Mimic.
Yeah. Oh my God,
How
yeah.
many 3/4 full bags of popcorn do you think were left on the?
Yeah,
Because to try to
I'm
eat,
done.
trying to eat during watching that movie.
it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically remove scent glands from a giant overcoat man bug, and they rub them all over themselves, and you're just like, this is so disgusting.
I will say though that like even though like I was meant on Pacific Rim and didn't care for Man of Steel, I will say though that like I think Hollywood has gotten better about like letting directors with vision make these movies.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I agree.
And that
You mean this big budget stuff?
yeah. Like, and I think because like the second unit effects stuff and the action scenes, they realize that it's like, well, that's a whole different talent. So they have a team for that, and then they bring in the guy with vision for the story and all and that end of things. And I will say that I think even though some of these movies I'm still not a fan of, overall the quality is significantly better than what we would have been treated to even 10 or 15 years ago.
So what do you think Michael Bay's vision is?
Well, he predates
Dollar
this theory.
signs.
He definitely predates this theory. He's grandfathered in.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious.
So, well, thank you for the video recovery.
Hey.
And I think that probably wraps it up for this week, right? So, what are we doing next week? Do you know, Kevin?
Red.
Red 2
and
screens
the
this
way
week.
way back.
And
Or this
okay,
week.
so it's okay. So not a big, huge summer movie. I guess they're maybe that bodes well for Pacific Rim. Maybe that does get a
It's
chance.
the lull. It's
Yeah.
a little bit of a lull.
Yeah, and they could use one, I suppose. So we will see you next week, and thanks for tuning in. And until next time, R2D2 can fly.
TalkSTL.com real spoilers powered by ReviewSTL.com.
Warning, the following film discussion will ruin the ending of any movie you haven't seen. Example, Bruce Willis is dead at the end of The Sixth Sense. See how I ruined it for you? Just like that. Here are a few more.
Silent breed is people!
I am your father.
Get it?
TalkSTL.com real spoilers. You've been warned.
Broadcasting live from a radioactive bunker inside of Bracket Compound, this is Real Spoilers. I am Tom O'Keefe, and surrounding us today are
Dan.
Blake. And Kevin.
And this week, I guess we will be tackling R.I.P.D.
Don't sound so enthused, Tom.
That's probably the most enthusiasm anyone could muster for the film. I just spoiled our spoiler. We're not going to like it, but we're not quite there yet. Let's
find out how we don't like it.
Yes. And also, I guess before we get too deep, we should let people know that we have our own little fancy Facebook page now. It's It's facebook.com/real spoilers. So feel free to log onto there and like things, and we'll probably be posting various things throughout the week, links to future episodes or maybe articles that we write for Review STL, things of that nature.
And we also have the podcast feeds now on reviewstl.com, and you can also find the link on the Facebook page. So if you use an app for your smartphone, a podcast app like Podkicker, just type in the feed and subscribe, and every new episode downloads for you.
Look at that. We're pretty fancy.
We are.
I'm very proud of ourselves. Well, I guess let's start off by checking in with how the movies did this week, and we'll get a box office report from Kevin. Take it away, Kevin.
There were a lot of movies this week. I think, Tom, you saw 5 alone, right?
I saw 6.
You saw 6
movies this week.
So a lot of new movies, and a lot of them did very poorly.
Yes.
So the number one movie, though, which was, I think, your favorite of the week, was The Conjuring.
Yeah, actually, I probably liked The Way Back a little bit more. I'm not a big horror movie fan, but I did think I did like The Conjuring, especially considering that that's not my style of film. I was very surprised at how much I liked it.
Yeah, that one held the number one spot, or took the number one spot at $41 million.
Whew. And that's a movie they paid $19 million to make. That's
doing pretty good so far.
Yeah.
Conjuring 2 coming 2015.
Well, it was designed for Conjuring 2 because it's based on real-life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh.
And they were the couple who kind of found the Amityville case. and it was funny because they went to great lengths in this film to like kind of let you know Amityville, but I don't think they
don't have the rights to it.
I don't think they could legally say Amityville in this context, and so they had to dance around it. I know even in the trailer they show a house that looks very much like the Amityville house, but it's not quite the Amityville house. And but yeah, I know the goal was to if this was a hit, that these characters will continue on to find more.
Well, it looks like they'll be continuing on.
Yes,
it looks like it's happening
for quite some time
based on those numbers.
Yeah.
And in the number 2 spot, Despicable Me 2 did another $25 million, bringing the grand total up to $276 million.
Which it only had a 43% drop, which is pretty low for a movie nowadays. I mean,
especially in its third week.
Oh yeah, I mean,
competing against 5 new releases at least.
I mean, you look at like on the other ones on the list, things like The Lone Ranger with 63% and stuff like that. I mean, usually a 50% drop is a average drop nowadays. Anything under that's pretty good.
And it's going up against another kids movie that also has legs, Monsters University, which that's at like 248 million, I think, isn't it? And so, I mean, that's no slouch. That it's not like that came out and tanked or was even a ground rule double for Pixar. I mean, that's a real hit movie.
Well, I mean, I think it also speaks volume that number 3 is Turbo at 21.5 million, and it's on its first week of release and earned about 4 million less than Despicable Me 2, which is on its third week of release. That's big.
And this does not bode well for Ryan Reynolds. He has 2 major flops in one weekend.
Oh,
that's
poor guy.
And like 100 in the lifetime of his career. So
yeah, he was in this one movie, Green Lantern. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
well, and R.I.P.D. is technically, well, we'll get to that. It's technically his 5th comic book movie.
Yeah.
And he's still, and I don't think any of them have been true hits.
No.
So he's like the Ted McGinley of comic book movies.
Bonus points for Ted McGinley reference. That's awesome.
That's what I do.
So in the number 4 spot, Grown Ups 2 is still hanging on.
Now R.I.P.D. opened this weekend, though. I think we missed that one. Where did that? Did you skip over that, Kevin?
That's number 7.
What? That's what? That's no. I'm sure R.I.P.D. is next. We just did number 4 was Grown Ups 2. So number 5 is clearly R.I.P.D. What's number 5?
Red 2.
What? No,
which is another new one that opened.
That's crazy talk.
Red 2 made 18.5 against Grown Ups second weekend, which did 20 million. And number 6 is Pacific Rim.
What? That should be R.I.P.D. 2 at this point, right?
And in the number 7 spot is R.I.P.D.
Oh,
12.7 million.
I'd like to point out, by the way, Red 2 opened a couple million less than Red, which didn't really have that fantastic of a opening box office weekend when it came out, but it had really good legs. So judging by the critical response of Red 2, I don't think we're going to see much more of that series.
I don't know. You could have said the same thing about Grown Ups 2, and look where that's sitting right now.
Yeah, but Grown Ups 2 made a lot of money in its first week, and Red 2. I mean, for a sequel to make less, a popular sequel or popular movie to make less on its sequel is kind of a big deal.
I think that's one of those sequels that it was the right, or the original rather was the right movie at the right time, and there was no real passion for it. It was just, that's out. It's the best.
Oh yeah,
thing.
I think it was competing, like in August or something like that.
Actually, I looked it up. It came out in October.
Oh yes,
but it was a fall release. There wasn't a lot going on.
Yeah, beginning of October is always a dead time of the year for the box office.
Right.
So if there's something at least halfway decent, you're good.
Which mystified me about its release date. Like, why put this out in the summer? Why not be the big fish in the little pond and come out in October again or September?
Yeah, especially this week with all the new releases. I mean, it was a baffling move, and I thought maybe they had something going for them. That was my hope, at least, going into it, but just was not good.
Did you guys notice, though, that R.I.P.D. opened up on 2,800 screens? So it's like the lowest of the top 8 movies. It's on the fewest screens. So it's pretty clear that the studio,
they
kind of knew it. This thing's gonna bomb.
The fact that they screened it for us on a Thursday, I think, is a big.
Well,
the day before it opens.
Yeah, it wasn't screened for critics anywhere until Thursday night.
Right.
So, I mean, that kind of they kind of knew. I mean, it was tracking for anywhere up to some people were calling like 20 million. I mean, the fact that it came in at less than 13, that's pretty sad.
Yeah. So I guess let's go ahead and just jump into R.I.P.D. 2. It stars Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges. And if you would like a synopsis, I suggest you go to Men in Black's Wikipedia page. And that was, I think, the big turnoff, I think, for people of the film is that it was so blatantly a ripoff of Men in Black. And the premise of the film is that Ryan Reynolds is killed and becomes a guy whose job is a police officer. He was a police officer who dies, and then they use him to go and capture escaped souls. It was always a little vague as whether or not they were supposed to be ghosts because they had a physical presence. Like, they never really, I felt kind of just like...
The Deados. What are the Deados?
Yeah,
exactly?
First off, what a horrible name.
Yeah,
like,
it sounds like a really awful Cheerios spinoff for Halloween or something.
Yeah,
you know?
like I cringe. I cringe just saying Deados. It sounds like it would have been like the band playing at the party scene of Mad Monster Party or something. But it's a horrible name. I cringe saying it. But and then Jeff Bridges plays the Tommy Lee Jones character, only he's from the Wild Wild West, and it's just a variation on his Rooster Cogburn shtick that he did in True Grit. Only there it wasn't shtick; it was actually good. And and from there, it's just the same movie, right? I mean, is there anyone that really wants to stick up for it otherwise? Or
I mean, I probably hated it the most out of everybody here, but I thought it mixed in a few portions of Ghost with with the best friend being the backstabber who sends him to his death, and kind of courting his girlfriend or wife or whatever she is, and then I also thought it took a lot of things out of Ghostbusters page, and which is really interesting. It takes a lot from two very, very popular series and manages to not capture at all what was so fantastic about both of those series.
Right. Not only could it not capture Ghostbusters, it couldn't capture real Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Like it was
that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But they were the real Ghostbusters.
Yes. So they told us.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really bothered me about the film was in Men in Black, there's an explanation for everything. So when an alien ship lands in the middle of New York, they have the neuralizer, which keeps their presence hidden and everything.
Right.
And it's supposed to be the same thing in this, but they're just out in the open, and they do mention, I can't believe you let that happen, but you would think that would happen probably more often with these things, and they have no way to neutralize those threats. And I felt like it could have been explained by, only the R.I.P.D. see them as, these ugly monsters or whatever.
Because the characters themselves, Jeff Bridges and
they have a glamour or whatever.
That when people see them, they don't look like Jeff Bridges and Ryan Reynolds. It looks like a small Asian man and a really hot supermodel, and so that's easy to explain away, and yet they didn't. It was very lazy in that regard.
And yeah, they had the Deados all over the TV, so people had pictures of these things. They knew they existed. I mean, they weren't even trying to act like they were going to cover it up or hide it. They just exist now, and they never explain it.
You never even get a glimpse of and it's not that type of movie, but you think you'd get some sort of glimpse of well, what would that mean for society as a whole if you've just proved the existence of the afterlife? You know what I mean? Or there would be someone there to say, well, no, these aren't really ghosts, these are whatever. And I know they weren't really ghosts, but I don't really know what else to call them, and I refuse to say the other word. So,
well, you know what it probably is. They saw these creatures on TV and they didn't believe they were real because the CGI looked so bad.
Right? I mean, it was atrocious. That is some of the worst CGI I've seen since Reaper.
The original Men in Black.
Yeah, like Reaper on CW or something. Yeah. And I liked Reaper. I didn't go. You don't go to Reaper for the effects, but I mean, it was. I mean, honestly, was it that
it looked
different?
TV quality. I was telling everybody after the movie that I really think its effects were on par with Men in Black's 1997 special effects. I mean, that's how bad it is. It looks like a 20-year-old movie, like the special effects do.
I really got the vibe that they were 2/3 of the way through finishing the effects on the movie, and they saw a rough cut, and they were just like, screw it. Don't throw any more money at this thing. Because the movie came in at the budget on it supposedly is $130 million, which for a film of this magnitude is actually a little light. And so that makes me think that they saw it and they started shaving money from the budget, and they're in post-production at that point, which would mean effects. I have nothing to back that up except for how lousy those creatures looked.
It doesn't make sense. It's almost like they worked on them as a placeholder and they were supposed to go touch them up, and they just said stop.
Fix it in post, and they said, well, maybe not.
Yeah. Post is now present.
But I mean, what's weird about the whole Men in Black thing is that initially when the first time I saw the trailer, I was like, wow, that's pretty much the same thing as Men in Black.
Right.
But so many people love Men in Black, and
Right.
I kind of dig the first one and portions of the other ones.
It's much better.
But you would have thought that by association, people would have been like, "I love Men in Black," and they would have gone.
But they just if they maybe if they hadn't received a Men in Black 3, what was that,
Recently.
last summer?
Yeah, last summer.
I mean they just got their Men in Black fix.
Yeah.
And so
They're like, nope, too soon.
Well, and the other thing to remember too, though, in all honesty, is once you go Men in Black,
you don't go back.
you do not go back. So that could have played
This is so true.
into it to a certain degree. But it's almost weird because the movie is so derivative of Men in Black, and like aggressively so. Like it's so.
I thought it was directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. The first moment I saw it, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
He just turned around and did another one.
But it's like so aggressively derivative that it's like it's almost above being criticized for it. Like it's
Really?
like if you were to stand up in the middle of that theater and be like, "This is Men in Black," I would half expect the characters in that film to stop, break the fourth wall, and go, "Well, no shit." Like, well, yeah, of course it is, and then just go back along their merry way. It would almost be tantamount to criticizing the film because it's in color.
Well, I think I went back and did some research on the comic that it was based on. I never read it, but I was so curious of the connection with Men in Black, and I thought to myself, okay, now wait a minute, maybe it was made before Men in Black. I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt and say, wait, maybe Men in Black stole it. I think the comic came out like a year after Men in Black hit theaters.
Really?
So
Right, and so
there's
which
no
mean-
doubt that it came out right after.
I think it came out. I want to say it came out in '99, which means that it came out well after the
Well, yeah, a
the
year or two
comic.
after, yeah.
But I mean, so it came out a year or two after the film, but even longer, obviously, than the comic, because the comic existed before the film, or it wouldn't be based on a comic. So even the comic itself is probably derivative, and the comic never even had a follow up until I think 2012. So it doesn't even seem like the
Which
comic
would probably
was that
be
popular.
after the rights were optioned.
Yeah,
for this.
presumably.
Now I believe they were holding on to the rights for this. This was in limbo for like 10 years or something.
And
I
it
want to
Should have
say.
stayed in limbo.
You know what? It's funny. It not only does it feel like the script was in limbo, it feels like the film had been shot. If it wasn't for who was in the film, like I could very much believe that the film had been shot 10 years ago and sat on the shelf.
I just want to know what made them think, after holding on to this property for so long and not making it, what made them pick it back up? What do you think was it that spurred them to make this?
My guess would be that the studios are just so desperate for tentpoles and franchises. They've become a franchise machine, and they're, I think, overly dependent on the existence of franchises.
It's not like R.I.P.D. was a big comic, though.
Not
Like,
at all.
Like, I mean,
but in their defense, I mean, Walking Dead wasn't that big of a comic either.
Exactly.
I mean, it was big in the comic world, but even within the comic world, it was a subset of a
R.I.P.D. wasn't even that big in the comic
No,
world.
not at all.
And
Not at all.
that's the thing, is I can understand a Walking Dead, which had a lot of popularity in the comic book world, and I think a lot of times if something's popular in one medium, it tends to translate well to another.
There's no great built-in audience.
Yeah, no, I mean there's not a bunch of fanboys to even pull from to like boost, as you can tell by the first weekend box office numbers.
I think what it is I mean, you see this all the time. You've seen it in other industries. In the 80s, when all of a sudden stand-up comedy was hot, and all of a sudden every bar put up a brick wall and a microphone, and you had A&E's Evening at the Improv, and it was everywhere. And all these really shitty comics started getting sitcom deals and production deals because everybody was looking for the next Tim Allen or Roseanne or Seinfeld, and typically that's not what they got. And you saw the same thing when grunge hit and all the bands in Seattle started getting signed, and their bench wasn't maybe quite as deep as they thought it was in Seattle. And I kind of feel like that's what was going on with R.I.P.D. is that the studios were like, well, comic books are big, go sign me a comic book. All those comic books must be the same.
Right.
I'm just amazed because there's so many properties out there in the comic book world that are so much better, and they either haven't been optioned or they've been stuck in limbo as well. And I'm like, why not make one of those? But I mean, like,
why isn't Preacher on Showtime?
Well, there's that's a prime example of something that has the fanboys and also has a story that could reach beyond the fanboys,
right?
And a compelling story that
HBO was working on that for.
Well, I mean, there was a film
long
being
time.
worked on for a while too. I mean, James Marsden was attached to star in it, and he was a producer on it. And I even saw like studio art of Arseface and people like that. So I mean, like they are trying to move on these projects, but I just don't get where someone looks at R.I.P.D. and be like, yeah, that's obviously a winner, you know.
But I think because you're talking about studio people, and they're not, and the people that make the decisions at the studio, they're not creative, and so they want to look for stuff that's already worked, and so they look at this and go, well, Men in Black made money, and this is just like Men in Black, so we should be okay.
Make it look like Men in Black.
Yeah, and so to them, it probably felt safe.
Think about it, because like studio people, look at David Fincher trying to get The Goon made.
Right.
Okay. He's been. I mean, there's a beloved comic book. You've got the fanboys, and you got David Fincher. This guy's no slouch.
Yeah.
And he can't get the funding for that.
Yeah.
And he's got like here's a demo reel. Here's we've got a voice cast, all this stuff. He can't get it made. So I mean, it's like the studios. Not only are they not out of the loop, but they refuse to even listen to the loop.
Right. And it's mystifying, and it's maddening. That they'll spend all that money on. Like, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a risky endeavor, why don't you at least try and make it good? Because if it's good, if you do it right, even if it comes out initially and fails, you would think that, well, eventually it finds a life and you make it back eventually. Where if you just make something awful just because you think you can market it easier, I don't know.
Well, I think that's what's so infuriating about movies like R.I.P.D. Like, it's derivative. It's not like you couldn't still make it fun. I mean, this was joyless. I don't know how many times in the theater I was sitting there and there was like that obvious little pause where like they were waiting for the audience to laugh, like they gave it space, and it was just crickets. I mean, I swear there were more failed jokes in this movie than ones that worked. I mean, there's only so much of the character that Jeff Bridges does that actually works, and when it does, people laugh. But
yeah, I mean, I won't say that I didn't laugh. There were parts of the because I won't say that the movie is completely without its charms. There were times that I laughed, or there were lines that I found funny, and I will say it was mercifully short. It clocked in like what, right at 30 minutes, and that's with credit, or 90 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes, and that's with credits. And credits are long in a movie like this because it's effects.
It felt longer to me though.
Yeah,
to be honest, I mean, it felt long. I just think that they could have done the Men in Black feel, but gone like a darker route with it. Instead, they like kept it, with dead people, deados. By the way, if you say deados in a mirror 3 times in the dark, you have a box office failure. It shows up.
Fantastic.
I know, but like you could have gone something dark with it, like make it a hard PG or
do the same. You can do the same thing, but put a twist on it, a different stamp on it. And it's not like derivative movies haven't been good. I mean, Wayne's World was just Bill and Ted.
Oh yeah,
or even the #1 movie at the box office, The Conjuring. They didn't break any new ground in that thing. It's just a haunted house movie. It just was a good haunted house movie.
Just think of this movie if it wasn't trying to be like kind of like a whimsical, funny like Men in Black is. I mean, aliens. No one's really afraid of aliens unless you've been like anal probed by one.
And even then, only about half of those people are scared. Yeah, the other half are like, bring on the aliens. Yeah, that's.
But no, I mean, like most people are fascinated by something like aliens, where dead people. I mean, everyone's got a fear of death, and it's kind of gross, and it's kind of. They could have gone a bit darker route with it, not tried to be like it was some whimsical fairy tale or something like Men in Black. I just felt that they really just could have deepened it up a bit and gone a little bit different direction. They probably would have been okay.
I didn't hate the movie. I did not think it was awful, but it was forgettable. It was one of those movies that was fairly entertaining. It definitely had its moments where the jokes fell flat and there was some cringeworthy stuff in there. But overall, I think it was entertaining for one watch, maybe on Redbox. And then I just could never see myself owning it or even wanting to watch it a second time. But the first time it ended, it was short enough, and I was like, okay, it was okay.
It'll be a fascinating movie on the USA Network, like 5 years from now or next year.
I don't even know if USA will pick it up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now you feel sad for it. Dan feels sad.
Oh man, I feel sorry, R.I.P.D.
He's gonna play a sad trombone.
What did you guys think of Kevin Bacon as the bad guy in this movie?
it was just one more thing that made me feel like it might have been shot 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that's kind of the way Kevin Bacon's going, like with X-Men First Class, him being the villain. I mean, it seems like he's coming back.
He made that work. You know, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, because when they said he was going to be the villain in First Class, I was like, okay. And, you know, and then he was going to be a Nazi. I was like, I don't think so. And I was like, wow, that was pretty impressive. Yeah. And the evolution that the character takes, I was like, that was actually pretty cool.
I loved him in First Class.
Yeah, he was great in First Class. But
as soon as he popped up in this, I was like, oh, he's the villain.
Yeah, well,
it was like instantaneous. Like, oh, he's the villain. Okay, now I know who the bad guy is.
It's like having a character actor pop up and go, oh, yeah. Like the random character be a character actor who's always playing the villain is like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I still remember watching movies when I remember watching Tremors when I was younger. Love that movie. And as much as I love him in that movie, there's always been a part of me that he just looks like an asshole to me. So I mean, he makes a good bad guy because he just has a look about him. And you're like, I'm not sure I'd like that guy.
Yeah, he's not like as a protagonist. He's usually not the go-to guy.
No,
he's just got that smarmy. He's just got that smirk.
Yeah, he's built a good career for a guy that was like supposed to be the A-list leading man and could never quite get over the hump. Maybe him and Ryan Reynolds should have a sit down in the break room of R.I.P.D.
But do you have a game named after you?
Guy?
What's that?
Do you have a game named after you? I mean, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. That's where he's built his niche. You know, I worked with everybody, and which, by the way, if you go into Google, you can type in anybody's name and put Bacon number behind it, and at the top of Google, it'll tell you how many steps away they are from Kevin Bacon. I think the highest I've gotten is like 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it should be 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon if you. Really
Did you have to go really old school where you're like Kevin Bacon and Lou Costello?
Oh, I had to go to like Sports Stars and things like that, and even then, it's like 3 steps
Lou
from
Gehrig.
Kevin Bacon. I'm like, yeah. We should try that.
I can't even remember. This is how forgettable that R.I.P.D. is. But the way they just kind of wrapped up things. I mean, how did that movie even end? I remember it just being. It was so. Well,
let me tell you,
it was so formulaic, and it just wrapped
in the last 5 minutes of R.I.P.D. It was just Ryan Reynolds checking his mail on his phone. That's all it was.
Right. That's right.
By the way, has every movie we've done on this show so far like had the destruction of a city? Because Man of Steel, Pacific Rim, R.I.P.D.,
World War Z,
all of them, like
the Lone Ranger.
It's the summer.
Oh, I guess.
I guess the Lone Ranger didn't destroy a city.
I forgot about that one.
Well, it destroyed dreams
of sequels.
What a fun summer. This has been fantastic.
Well, I feel like we've almost kind of ran out of steam on R.I.P.D. There's just not a whole lot. It's not a very story-intensive movie. Like some movies, like Man of Steel, even though I wasn't a fan of it, there was a lot to talk about there. There's a lot of meat on that.
Well, it's polarizing.
Yeah,
and it still has some heat behind that. There's still people are still seeing it, but it's kind of funny how you'll see Facebook posts or articles and people are like, I just saw it and I'm appalled. It's like, wow. It's like you didn't read our blog post.
My dad texted me about a week and a half ago about it, and he's like, I don't get how he flies. I'm like, wait a minute, you just went a Superman movie and you don't get how he does it matter? Like, I mean, really, is that that's the thing you took away from it? You're
75 years of history. 75 years later, and it still bothers me.
That's the engineer in my dad right there. I think he was confused because they show him trying to jump in the movie and it's obvious that his flying results from that, so he doesn't get how he just hovers.
Right.
And that's what he was trying to get across to. But I just thought it was hilarious that he didn't have any of the other complaints that everybody had. I can't believe he killed somebody. He's like, how does he hover?
Yeah. He has the same complaint he would have had in 1938. Yeah. Although originally he did not fly.
He did not fly.
He jumped.
He leaped.
Yeah, it was him. And he was, I guess what Buzz Lightyear would say, he was falling with style.
But the problem with the leaping is that it's just kind of dumb. I'll be right there, Doring. Here we are.
But I think even they couldn't, no pun intended, make the leap in their head of there's nothing to propel him unless he ate Mexican last night or something. That's how's he moving through? He's not. Should he be swimming? He's should there be a motion?
Well, there you go. There's the answer. He ate Mexican. It's a chimichanga. It's chimichanga powered flying.
Chimichanga
Done.
Olsen.
Yeah.
Is what he. No what? No. So should we touch on Red 2? Everybody here saw Red 2?
I missed it, and
Okay.
I'm kind of glad I missed it from what everyone's saying.
I think we should touch upon it. Like I said, the first movie, Red, I really enjoyed. It was a surprise. It had a great cast, and I thought it was clever, so it made for a fun movie. I really enjoyed it. And so going into this one, you obviously have got the same thing. There's retired, extremely dangerous is why it's called Red, and you've got pretty much the same cast except for Morgan Freeman.
Did they ever say that in part 2?
I think they might have.
In the very beginning, they spoon feed it to you. The FBI agents come in for the funeral they're at, and they go, "He's retired, extremely dangerous."
Yeah.
Okay.
They just give it to you.
Which
right?
I mean,
That's
if
clever.
that's an actual classification, that's fine. It's not like in other movies where they're like, "Hey, you're a real Tomb Raider, aren't you?"
Right.
No,
I was just I wasn't criticizing.
No.
That. I was just asking. Did they ever?
They did actually say it, but it was like
I thought it was kind of. I mean,
really?
It was very. I mean, first of all, these are CIA operatives. They're secret agents. And they're coming to this funeral. Discreetly trying to pick him up, and
really
then out loud they're just like, "He's retired, extremely dangerous."
Was that? I was gonna say, was that discreet?
Why?
They pull up in the black car with all suits and four. It was like blatantly obvious.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
They're skywriting in above.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the people, his fellow agents that have probably been briefed on the mission, probably don't need to be told and reminded that he's retired, extremely dangerous. They know they're there to get the guy. Right?
I want a Pulitzer.
But so
they're terraforming.
So
I think we missed it last week, so we have to do that twice tonight.
Right, exactly. So basically, the premise is that the CIA is still after them. No one feels safe. John Malkovich comes in, and while Bruce Willis and Mary Louise Parker are shopping at Costco, which I'm sure Tom you enjoyed.
I love the Costco. I don't know if we've discussed this on the podcast yet, but I am a huge fan of Costco.
You hear that, Costco? We need sponsors.
I talk to people about Costco the way other people talk to people about Jesus. Do you have a personal relationship with Costco? I do.
Oh, what would Costco do?
Right, they would offer you extreme values and great savings.
Oh, that's awesome.
So remember, if you go to Costco to get your membership, mention real spoilers.
And they'll be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Great.
So they're shopping, and John Malkovich is, looking over his shoulder. They're still after us, and Bruce Willis is like, "No, I'm retired. I'm
extremely dangerous, but I am retired."
This sounds a lot like Die Hard 5, actually. I'm retired. They said that about 10 times or 15 in the film. I think. So he's, "Oh no, I'm retired," and then
I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
Right.
He kept saying he was on vacation when he never went on vacation.
Right,
It was
exactly.
never the point of the trip.
I'm over in Russia getting shot at with explosions and crashing cars. I'm on vacation. No, you're not.
Yeah, really.
But there's a bomb planted in John Malkovich's car, and where'd John Malkovich go? He's not going to be in much of the movie? Nope, he's alive.
Yeah.
So he faked his own death to escape the CIA. So they basically go on this adventure, and they've got multiple people after them because different countries are all putting hits. You've got Helen Mirren, MI6 has put a hit on Bruce Willis. Hong Kong, or I'm not sure.
Hong Kong. Yeah.
I think Hong Kong needed to put
I think it was a generic Asian country number 6.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's what it was.
They had the
actor's Korean, I believe.
Yes.
So meanwhile, they're trying to figure out why they're getting pinned for this Nightshade operation, which is a nuclear bomb.
I think you paid more attention to this plot than the writers did.
Yeah.
Like all I know is like just people trying to kill him. Go. Like that's
you took a lot in. I actually spent more time obsessed with trying to get my icy through the straw. It was just especially frozen, but it was much more fascinating than the movie. I have to say, I was like, man, this icy. Why won't you give? And then
tell us more. That actually sounds.
Oh my god, it was incredible. I was like, my god, the icy's lasting the entire movie.
Was the icy red?
No, it was white cherry, but that's not a race thing. It's just white cherry.
Tasted red.
And the whole time I was just like, I can't believe that I'm actually more fixated on trying to get this icy through my straw than I am about the movie. But I would just be like, okay, I'm gonna go back to my icy.
Well, and so the Nightshade, the nuclear bomb, that's how they introduced Anthony Hopkins, because he invented this nuclear device, and they've apparently had him locked up in an insane asylum for 30 years. So they need his help on locating it, because somehow
This sounds familiar for Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah. So somehow after 30 years, he's still going to know where the location is. It was conveniently somewhere he planted it 30 years ago, so that was great. Did anyone think that Anthony Hopkins was going to be a bad guy going into this?
I did not.
Locked him up for 30 years.
I did not give it any thought whatsoever going into this.
Yeah.
This is not. You know what I mean? Like I gave no
There was no pre-gaming done on this film.
We can go back to like having Kevin Bacon. It's like you have Anthony Hopkins just appear towards like the almost the last third of the movie. You're gonna do something with him. He's not just gonna be like a random guy and they're like, okay, well, see you guys later, bye. So it was pretty obvious that a lot of the whatever plot there was, it was going to pivot on his performance. And I have to be honest, I like Anthony Hopkins pretty much in anything. Like, he's a guy, sleepwalking is still pretty talented.
Well, that was one of my main things I was going to bring up here is I actually liked Anthony Hopkins in it. Since this is a spoiler-related show, he is the bad guy, and he actually wanted to get out and find the bomb because he wants to set it off. And I thought him as a bad guy, this maniacal kind of crazy villain type, really was good. I mean, he was, I think, cutting people's throats and, just killing people with guns.
So we were led to believe there was no actual proof of
I think he was more scratching him because there was no blood in this movie.
So this movie have the same exact plot as Die Hard 5 then? Because that's the same thing that happens in the fifth Die Hard movie. The bad guy is all locked up, and then he tricks them into getting them out, and he leads them out, and it's like, oh, I'm the bad guy.
That is
your point.
Exact thing, yeah. One thing.
Way to go, Bruce Willis.
Right. Well, Bruce Willis is like, hey, that Red movie we've been wanting to do a sequel to? I was just in this movie.
I've got a way to cut the budget. Here's the script for the last movie I did.
But yeah, Tom, that was something that really bothered me was the special effects and blood. That was the main thing is, okay, I am not someone that needs an overly violent movie. If you have an action movie, you can have explosions and stuff, and you don't need necessarily violence and blood going everywhere. But in this movie, they are shooting people and more than once, maybe 3 or 4 times, cutting throats as their way of killing them with a knife. Yeah. And they cut their throats, and the guy ends up on the ground, no blood anywhere in the area, no black blood, nothing. And then you can see their neck, and there's not even a wound.
Yeah.
Not even some post special effects, just a little red area, anything.
Just not even anything to indicate that there had been a cut.
Right. Yeah. So I'd be fine with not even necessarily a ton of blood, but the fact that there weren't bruises, scratches, anything. I mean, it honestly looked like kids playing pretend, trying to make a movie.
Yeah, it was just a notch above them pointing their fingers at each other and saying bang.
Right. It really was because they would take a gun and shoot someone, pow, and you would see no blood, no wound, anything like that. They would take a knife and go, I'm going to get you, and you hear some special effect that wasn't even that menacing.
Yeah.
And you see them drop to the ground, and it reminded me of kids trying to make a movie with some old VHS camcorder,
right.
And making their own action movie.
Yeah, and there was a lot
Usually those are better than this, though.
Yeah. There was also a lot of stalling for time.
I don't know if you noticed, Kevin, but it seemed like to move the plot along, they would like a major for this movie action sequence would happen, and then they'd spend about 10 minutes just pulled over to the side of the road to talk about it, and then talk about what they're going to do next. Like, aren't you being chased? Like they escape a building where they're getting shot at, and there's grenades going off, and Willis killed like 18 guys, and they're just on the side of the building, waiting to get in the escape vehicle, still arguing. Like,
well, I think
you just killed all the.
I think on the Blu-ray there's a deleted scene where they say no tag backs.
Okay,
so
yeah, because I mean it's like they're just really just there's a lot of just moments where they're just gonna stand around and talk for a while. Let's just talk.
There is no sense of urgency whatsoever.
Oh.
And so in the beginning of the movie, that you set up Brian Hung Lee. What is his name? I'm trying to think of the Asian assassin's name. It's Brian
Holy
Lee.
Fook. That's what it was.
But anyway, they set him up, and Bruce Willis says this line that he is the world's greatest contract killer.
Yeah.
He's the world's greatest contract killer, but yet he is foiled in every attempt to kill them in some kind of semi-comedic fashion.
Right.
And you just, don't say he's the world's greatest.
If he gets close enough, he will be the world's greatest.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it just came off.
What they don't tell you is that due to budget cuts, there really aren't a lot of great assassins anymore.
No.
That's
because they're all retired.
Right. And extremely dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. So it just.
Well, maybe they're moderately dangerous.
Yeah. They're irritable is really what it is. They're just retired and irritable.
All right. That's all they've got going for them, and it's hilarity ensues. But
Helen Mirren looked like she filmed all her scenes in like 2 days. Because especially at the end, like they go all the way to England to get her, and they're like, "We need you for the big whatever the hell they were doing at the end, that was the big deal. And then they show up there, and then she sits in the car on the phone.
Right.
And it's like, well, you could have been on the phone in England. Do they not have cell reception in England, or what? She is literally in the car on the phone.
No, it was
she's fulfilling a contractual obligation.
Yeah, but she's doing press for it.
Well, that was it.
And she talks about how, of course they're going to say good things, but she seems genuinely excited to, had fun getting to play that type of a role for a change.
Well, and this is the movie that brings two of the actors, the two main actors who've played Hannibal Lecter together.
Right.
You've got Brian Cox, who was in Manhunter, which if you haven't ever seen, which was the movie with William Peterson, an 80s movie, one of Michael Mann's first movies. Check it out. It's totally awesome. It's a totally different take.
And part of it takes place in St. Charles.
It does, which is always terrifying when you watch. You're like, oh, that's pretty close. And just a totally different take on the character of Hannibal Lecter. And Brian Cox, phenomenal in that movie. And so you got Brian Cox, and then you've got Anthony Hopkins, who they.
And I believe he was supposed to be the original voice of Aslan in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh,
for real! Like I think he had even cut it, and they didn't like it, and they
Brian Cox.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There was a year back when X2 came out or something. He was in 11 movies that year. He was a workhorse for.
So you've got those two, and it's like, well, here's a kind of that maybe something will happen with that. Not really. They're just they had a couple they
had two lines of dialogue together.
Seemed like they were like, hey, yeah, you're Hannibal Lecter too. Okay, let's say something. Hey, how you doing? Meh. And that was it.
Brian Cox was all like, I played Hannibal Lecter, and Anthony Hopkins was like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Well, did you get an Oscar for that?
Sure.
Didn't think so.
Where do you keep your Oscar? Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I'll be over at catering.
So the actor I was thinking of that played the Asian assassin, Byung Hung Lee. I was pretty close on that one. So he basically he's someone
super close.
I said Brian Hung Lee. But,
yeah.
So anyway,
that's the Americanized version.
But,
there's a lot of Asians named Brian.
So this is a guy that knows martial arts. He's been in a lot of stuff. I mean, he was in The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. Did any of you guys see that?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty fun movie. He was in I Saw the Devil. This guy knows how to fight, and he's done some pretty good scenes in movies. And he really has only one scene that stands out at all, and it's when he's fighting 19 police officers in a convenience store.
Yeah.
Right. And it is edited so poorly. It's just cut these couple seconds at a time, and it's not very fluid at all. And it's supposed to be kind of comedic. He's kicking things at him and hitting him with doors, and it's like you've got an actor that can do martial arts, and you don't even utilize him.
Well,
at all.
It's not shot in a way that there's no rhyme or reason in the way they shot the action. The fight sequences, every action sequence is shot with very short snippets, and they just edited every single thing together. There's not a moment in any of the big battles that lasts 2 seconds. They're just let's stitch it all together. So Bruce Willis, pick this up. He picks it up. Bruce Willis, point it over there. And then they have a shot of him pointing it over there. And then Bruce Willis, go, ow. And then they would edit it together. Wow, really? You couldn't just film any of this as fluid motion? It's just choppy.
Yeah, very much so.
Whenever they stole his plane, then it became some kind of a comedic thing. He's the world's greatest agent, but then they steal his private jet, and then he's just back to get them. I want my plane back.
Yeah, I want my $2.
Yeah, that becomes the running joke, and it's just goofy. It's just, if you're gonna set something up like that, I understand it's a comedy, but they set him up as the world's most serious killer and all this stuff, and then nope, he can't even kill these guys. These guys can kill people left and right, but the world's best contract killer falls flat every time.
Yeah, it was almost like a Peter Sellers sort of a thing.
Yeah, and
I went straight to Cato on that.
Yeah,
but it's not a race thing again.
Yeah.
And what's up with them? Back to No Sense of Urgency. They were hanging out at their hotel. They were, they're in bathrobes, and then
shopping. Yeah, they went shopping while they was out.
Yeah, they went shopping. Mary Louise Parker wants to go out to dinner because they're in Paris. They go. Bruce Willis goes out to dinner with Catherine Zeta-Jones, who we haven't mentioned yet. But
she's in this with a real hat problem. I don't know. One, was it a wig on her?
I don't know. Her face looked weird.
Something was.
Does she have alopecia?
Well, she looked off, and then she had these series of hats, these outrageous hats. But she's Russian. Haha, that's how it works.
And that's the thing. She's Russian, but doesn't have a Russian accent.
Right?
No, she doesn't.
I mean, she doesn't.
I think because they know to Americans, all accents are the same, so they're like, screw it.
Yeah,
Foreign is foreign.
Foreign.
But she's supposed to be this Russian general that obviously is pure Russian, but doesn't even try to pull it off. I was so surprised. I'm like, wait a minute, is that her Russian accent? No, just don't even try there at all.
Yeah. No, it's okay though because the hat tells it all.
Yeah, and then
the Russian hat.
Yeah, I do it.
And then, of course, I mean, it's so formulaic. She was Bruce Willis's old love interest, and of course, Mary Louise Parker gets jealous. And in the end, she's the bad guy that is going to do whatever she has to for her country, even taking out Bruce Willis because it's for her country. And then she has a change of heart, and she abandons her country, and she helps them out. And it's just like, there's no way that would ever happen in her position.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so unbelievable, even for a ridiculous comedy, that she's going to go abandon her mission and her post, and because I still have feelings for Bruce Willis. You knew it was going to happen, but
and what's funny about this movie is that usually, like with any big movies, and they have like a scene where the main actors are in another country, they traditionally don't actually go, and they just send. They usually have lookalikes, and they shoot them from the back, and they have second unit film them and stuff like that. They're actually in Paris. I was like, this isn't, so I think maybe they just wanted to get a vacation out of this movie.
Maybe that's how they got them to sign on.
Like, hey, we're going to Paris. They're like,
filming?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, wow, the first thing I thought was, let's just wait till we see all the actors from the back walking around the Eiffel Tower, because that's usually what you see in a movie. And there they are in the hotel. I'm like, well, they didn't CGI that. They're in Paris. So
oh geez,
kudos for that.
Not like did you guys see Identity Thief with Jason Bateman and Melissa McCarthy?
Yeah, when they're supposed to be in St. Louis.
They're in St. Louis, and it's CGI, a green screen arch in the background. And,
don't they come into town from the wrong direction?
I think so.
I think
everything
they do.
from the highway, and they see the arch, and then they're in the hotel. It's like they couldn't have got them to St. Louis. They had to CGI in. It looked so bad.
But when you talk about the location affecting people taking, that's the actress, I forget her name, but that played Mrs. Howell on Gilligan's Island. She took the pilot because she was like
Natalie Schaefer.
Yeah, that sounds right. But they were like, she was like, well, shoot in Hawaii.
Yeah,
I'll take the pilot and shoot in Hawaii. Screw it. And and then like couldn't believe that it got picked up. Like, and that actually happened to Robert Reed for the Brady Bunch. Not that it was shooting anywhere fancy, but he was like, it was free money to shoot this pilot. He was actually a trained Shakespearean actor, and was like, oh, I'm gonna make a quick $15,000 to shoot this pilot. And he read the script and was like, well, that's a big turd. That'll never go. And he's like, so I'll take your money to shoot the pilot. A ruined career later.
That did kill his career.
So we ended up with the nuclear device. Sorry to spoil this for you, Blake. I know you're waiting for this to go.
Okay,
it was the nuclear device was in the Kremlin, and we just saw the Kremlin in Mission Impossible 4. I've not seen the Kremlin in many movies, and I thought it was interesting to see it twice. In, two recently. Big recent movies. And did you guys know that they should probably up the security, because you can go through a Papa John's bathroom and break down the wall, and it gets you into the Kremlin? That's
yeah, I mean that's pretty surprising that one that Papa John's was. I didn't even know they were there, but that's pretty.
Well, I was going to say gratuitous product placement, or is there a Papa John's next to the Kremlin?
There better be.
There is now. Are they even in Russia? That's almost as bad as the can of Pepsi that was on Adam Sandler's nightstand in Grown Ups.
They left because they hated Obamacare, so they're moving all their operations to Russia.
Well, and one big fight scene, there's a big shootout, and there's like a big can of Pringles laying across the whole bottom half of the screen. I'm like, I wonder how much Pringles paid.
Like, I was waiting for that to become a plot point. Like, I thought they were going to turn it into like a silencer or something.
Pop out of it.
Well, I saw a table fall over, and then I see in the next shot, I didn't see it on the table, but all of a sudden, boom, on the ground, Pringles. And I swear a guy was going to go pick them up. A soldier walks into the room. He's looking for Bruce Willis, and he like looks down, on the ground. And I thought he's going to pick up and show this Pringles to
eat one and be like, fantastic. I know this is endangering my life, but they're so delicious.
That's one of the things that really bothers me about movies today is how gratuitous the product placement is. I don't mind product placement when it seems natural, but man, they really go out of their way where you see like 14 different Dr. Pepper machines in like a 10-minute span or something like that. So it's like, come on, and don't treat your audience. It makes me want to buy their product less.
Yeah, I mean,
like IHOP and Man of Steel or Sears.
Or Sears.
Those are both very
pretty glaring. Yeah, and it can be done well. I mean, they've been doing product placement in the Bond movie since the beginning of the Bond movie, since Dr. No. But they fit within the
it's crafted,
the scene.
and I
They
think
fit within the movie.
And I think the problem,
and I think
fit within the movie. And I think the problem or the difference there is that the people that make the Bond movies, they only make Bond movies,
right?
And so they're very protective of that brand of Bond as a brand, and so they're not going to let you're not going to see Bond tooling around in the new Toyota Camry, and he's not he's not going to drink
Pringles.
Yeah, he's not going to drink a Zima. And so it's like they've been they really go out and they cultivate those relationships, and they know they wouldn't even approach somebody if it didn't fit the the character of the movie. Where with something like this, they're like, sure, we'll shove a Pringles can in there.
Yeah, I mean, like Bond. Yeah, Bond's a great example because I mean they had their special edition Bond watch that's like a $25,000 timepiece.
Yeah. Omega watch.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, and it's limited edition to the Bond movie. And I mean, like, and the thing. The reason it fits is because that's something the character would wear.
Right. Exactly.
And it's really not like you would never know to look at his watch and be like, oh, that's a really nice timepiece, Yeah. But like it works for what it is. It's stylish because James Bond is stylish, and, and it works.
Well, and I know there was some controversy with Bond. I think 2 movies back, where all of a sudden they put him in was it a BMW or?
Oh yeah, well they did that in GoldenEye. They had him in a BMW.
Yeah, like a Z3.
But it was a Z3.
Z3,
and that was like people were like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's kind of a shitty car for Bond.
Was Bond ever in an Audi instead of an Aston Martin? I thought there was an Audi in there. I might be thinking of the.
I think there was one time he was in an AMC Gremlin.
Yes,
and that was I believe that was George Lazenby.
No, well, it was actually a Pinto, but he used it as a weapon. You just tap it.
He married it, and then it died.
Yeah, it blew up.
Did you guys notice, going back to product placement, and since you mentioned Man of Steel, that he was drinking a Budweiser in his kitchen?
Yeah, I did notice it.
Why would Superman drink beer? I mean, I liked the movie a lot, but I was wondering. I thought that's okay. He drinks a hometown beer. It's Budweiser, what used to be St. Louis beer. I'm like, that's kind of cool. But then I thought about it. What does that do for Superman?
I just wasn't so sure.
It tickles.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know if alcohol works on him or not, but I just and I'm not against drinking. I mean, in my day job, we make money because we sell beer to people. So but I just don't think a Superman is the kind of guy that has a beer. I think he's above that. Am I wrong?
It seemed out of place for me. I just don't know why he was.
I don't know if it was just trying to establish that he's trying to fit in. And
he's a regular
normal
Joe.
It's everyman move.
But how does he fly? That's the thing.
Well, Bud Light makes him a little gassy.
There it is.
Yeah.
Chimichangas and Bud Light. Done.
And Red 2, the ending of that movie. Did you guys see the end coming with Anthony Hopkins on the plane? The bomb was about to go off, and Anthony Hopkins has them at gunpoint and says, "Okay, you guys stay here with the bomb. I'm stealing your plane."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, okay. Oh, we're gonna die in 5 seconds." And it counts down, and Anthony Hopkins hears some beeping in the background, and he goes to the a food tray compartment, and what? And I just thought, oh, that's so by the number. I mean, when you saw Bruce Willis kind of ducking around before he came out, I'm like, oh, he planted the bomb on the plane, and then
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say let's see what you got to decide there first. It was just the whole thing. It was
come
like
up with something.
Bruce Willis walks on board with the bomb, and then he leaves with the bomb, and he's like, get off, and it's just I'm sorry.
He probably hid it in a Pringles can.
There it was.
No, Pringles wouldn't allow that. He hid it in a can of Lay's stack.
Stacks.
Yeah. It has to be what was it? There was back when Jersey Shore mattered, and
Jersey Shore mattered.
Yeah, to a certain demographic. That show mattered. You could not like it, but that show made a lot.
I've never seen a single episode of it, and I'm so proud of myself
But
for
I
that.
forget what it was, but Snooki was going around with, I think, some designer purse. It was like, I don't know, name Gucci, and I might have this backwards, but she was going around with a Gucci purse all the time. And you know how they send purses to the stars so they could be seen with them, and she got a bunch of Prada purses, I think it was, and they were from Gucci.
Ooh. Perfect.
Yeah, they were basically please stop destroying our brand by carrying our stuff around.
Yeah.
And they sent her
other brands.
They sent
the
her
old brand switcheroo.
Yeah, they sent her the competitor's brand.
Here, these are for you.
Yeah. Oh, you like Skippy? Perhaps you should try Jif.
Thank you.
So do you think there is a chance that we might see a Red 3?
Not from what this weekend looks like. I mean, it'll probably do well overseas because that's solid box office.
That's what I'm wondering.
That's a solid cast for overseas, but I just don't think it's it's going to do well. It's not on pace to do well enough here. They should have not released this movie
How well
in
did
July.
the first one do? Because did it do well? Because
it did.
Or did it do well?
It did
on
almost
video?
200 million, didn't it?
Worldwide,
Really?
yeah, worldwide it made almost 200 million. It did okay. I think it was like
Oh,
maybe
that's why they
almost
did it.
100 domestic, a little over.
And it had good word of mouth, and for the time. I mean, I remember that was the one they screened like 2 or 3 months ahead of time for critics. They did a day screening, and actually the first one I saw didn't have all the finished visual effects, which didn't detract from it at all. Which is what I loved. Is like I saw it, and I'm like, man, even without
kind of like R.I.P.D.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
didn't have all the
which by the way, R.I.P.D. was directed by Robert Schwentke, who did Red, and one of what really surprised me is because I mean Red was a lot of fun, and it wasn't anything like really clever, but it was a lot of fun.
It was fun. It was a fun movie.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
And
when I saw
and
it.
that's what confused me about R.I.P. because I didn't think it was fun at all, and I want to know why he passed up directing Red 2 for
He does
R.I.P.D.
not want to go to Paris.
He doesn't like Pringles.
I mean, if you look at it,
or Papa John's at all.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, Red was a surprise hit, and they clearly weren't going to spend a lot of money on Red 2.
Yeah.
And on paper, R.I.P.D. would be the bigger movie. Maybe he's launching a franchise, and he's going to get $130 million to play with.
Yeah.
And he's got an actor who just won an Oscar, and he's got Ryan Reynolds, who they keep saying is going to be hot, and it's just not quite getting there.
That's the one I just don't get. I mean, Ryan Reynolds, like I've never met anybody who doesn't like Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's a very charming guy, but he is not able to carry a movie at all.
He is this generation's Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
I mean, he is.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll just have to wait for Monkey Bone 2, and it's going to have Ryan Reynolds, and we'll be done.
Which is a shame because I do like Ryan Reynolds. But
he is a likable guy.
Yeah.
I still was upset that they cast him as the Green Lantern, not because I didn't want him cast in another comic book movie, but I always thought he would be a really good Flash.
I was going to say Flash. I would like
totally
to see him as
agree.
Flash. And I think after R.I.P.D., maybe his comic book movie days are over.
Yeah, who is his agent, by the way? I mean, like all these movies he's taking on that are just, terrible. I mean, I don't think he's the problem with most of these movies. It's the fact that he's choosing movies with just terrible scripts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the kind of movies he's choosing are the kind of movies that you don't probably even see the script in advance. You know what I mean? Like
you see the treatment or something,
right?
And like this is what it's going to be big. It's going to be a big budget.
Right.
Let's do this.
And he just keeps ending up through the luck of the draw. Because I mean, playing Deadpool on paper and Wolverine,
except that it ended up not really being Deadpool,
right? But he probably didn't know that going in.
Yeah.
But on paper, that should have been big.
Yeah.
And that's when they didn't let him talk.
Yeah,
Deadpool that doesn't talk.
You have a guy who like one of his most charming is
how funny he is, and that's why you would cast Ryan Reynolds because he could pull that off.
Well, they touch on that in the beginning of that movie, at the beginning, and then that's the end of that.
Yeah,
he has a little smarmy moment at the beginning of Wolverine,
right? Because if you're not going to let him talk at that point, it's basically you didn't cast Ryan Reynolds, you cast you cast the stuntman.
Yeah.
And, not to go too much into another movie, but Turbo, I feel bad that it's not doing that well against, like Despicable Me, because I really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
Tom, what did you think of Turbo? I thought it was a lot of fun.
I liked it. It was relatively forgettable. There was some interesting stuff going on with some of there was a large Hispanic presence in the film. And it'll be interesting to see if that ticks anyone off because it really walks a line between like embracing that culture and they're certainly likable characters, because the guy that finds Turbo and is his champion. It's kind of like a Ratatouille combination because we can hear Turbo speak, but he can't, and so but he's Turbo's champion and gets him in the Indianapolis 500 and all that, and but they work at this rundown like strip mall in East LA, and they own a taco truck, which but at the same time it's like, well, I guess in that that there are going to be Hispanics that own taco trucks. I mean, that's not and he was treated with dignity. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't portrayed to be an idiot or dumb or mean. He certainly wasn't the villain. And there was also some interesting stuff going on. I don't know if you're familiar with the term code switching.
No, what is that?
Code switching is when someone speaks one way around their friends and a different way around other people. And so people from the South do it, and everybody does it to a certain degree. You talk with your friends differently than you talk in a professional setting.
You have a shorthand.
Yeah, but there's an actual phrase for it. It's called code switching, and I found it fascinating that this character partakes in code switching because when there's a part where he's trying to convince the Indianapolis 500 to let this snail into the race, and he puts on these glasses, these kind of black frame horn rim glasses, and when he goes in to represent himself and Turbo, in his accent lessons, and he walks differently, and the fact that he's walking differently tells me that there was it's not just a choice the actor made. You know what I mean? If it was just his accent changed, I would be okay, well, that's just a choice of the actor. But when the character's walking differently, I found that interesting. So it's a tough line to walk, because when you don't have a lot of Hispanic representation in films, when you do get some, all of a sudden there's pressure on it to kind of speak for all Hispanics, and so while I don't know, it's a tough line to walk. Am I making any sense here? That it's there are certainly going to be Hispanics that work in the food industry. That's just,
right.
The census will bear that out. But at the same time, to build an entire movie around one, you start to say well, are you saying that this is representative of all Hispanics, even though he was a positive character?
Gotcha.
Turn that into a question and answer it.
There you go.
But overall, they probably went not the direction you thought I was going to go with Turbo. But I liked it. I thought it was cute. But I definitely see why, if people are, have the choice between Monsters University, Despicable Me 2, and this, it's going to lose out, you know?
Yeah, it makes sense when you look at what it's up against. But yeah, too bad for Ryan Reynolds, but well.
Well, I guess, let's see. Dan, do you have a video recovery for us?
Funny you should ask. So there's, since I didn't get to see R.I.P.D, and now I feel like I did. So I actually, when I heard the storyline, I was like, that sounds really strangely familiar. And I remembered a movie in 1988 called Dead Heat, starring Treat Williams.
And Joe Piscopo.
This is post juiced up.
I was going to say, this is roided out Joe Piscopo. This is
roided out Joe Piscopo. And he's got the quite legendary mullet in this movie. Treat Williams plays Detective Roger Mortis. Yeah,
subtle.
There you go. And he is a cop who gets killed and then comes back from the dead to fight otherworldly evil.
Wow, how are they not getting sued? That's very...
That sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
It's more or less zombies with guns. This is it's kind of it's an okay movie. I remember, I saw this in 88.
Right.
So this is 25 years old, and I think I like to classify this movie as theoretically enjoyable, because there are things in this movie I'm like, well, that's good in theory. And so there's things that kind of happen that kind of made me laugh.
Right.
It suffers greatly for its budget, and it also is very. This is an R-rated movie in 1988, where violent, gratuitous violence was at its it was height.
Right.
It was gratuitous violent, where you're like, oh, that's a little over the. Yeah. That's ridiculous. What is happening?
PG movies where people were getting their hearts ripped out.
Absolutely, from Steven Spielberg. So this isn't really. I can't say that this is a good movie, but it's an interesting movie, and it does boil down to zombies with guns. Your lead character dies and he comes back, but he is decaying throughout the movie. So he by the end of the movie, he is a zombie with a gun. So that's kind of fun. Joe Piscopo, he's just cracking wise the whole way through, even when his buddy gets killed and then comes back.
Did they figure out a way to work in him playing drums into the film at some point?
He doesn't play drums.
Wow.
But he does flex a lot.
I bet.
He
can't not flex.
But there is the highlight of the movie is there's this Asian man, or a Chinese guy. He's a Chinese guy. He owns a Chinese restaurant. He also has the device that resurrects the dead, and they set it off in his Chinese restaurant. He's not only just some sort of mystical evil Chinese dude. He also owns a Chinese restaurant, which I didn't see the code switching happen here.
So also a laundromat.
Yeah. So yeah.
And
so he Yeah, and the Kremlin, actually, if you go through the bathroom, it reaches the Kremlin. So they set off the device, and all of the dishes in the Chinese restaurant come to life. So, like, the Peking duck start quacking, and it's
all the cats and dogs.
It's a very gross kind of movie, and then like a steer that was, I guess, hanging up in the meat locker comes charging out. So it's a headless slab of beef,
right?
But
played by also Joe Piscopo.
Also Joe Piscopo. I mean, it's a movie where it's like there's a shelf life on the main character. He's dead, and he's not coming back. It also has Darren McGavin, who, you know, the Night Stalker,
right,
and the dad from Christmas Story. If you've never seen The Night Stalker, I highly recommend it. It was a great, 70s show that actually was the inspiration for the X-Files. So check that out.
And there's side boob in the pilot.
That's right.
I watched it I watched it on Netflix with my son, and I was like, this was made for TV. This should be fine. This was a television show in 1970. I'm like, we just saw titty.
Yeah.
What happened there?
It was the 70s.
Like, you guys high five after?
Yeah.
It has Vincent Price, and I think that might be one of his close to last roles. But I think the best thing this movie has going for it is that every single character dies. Every single character, except for one guy but you thought he was dead. So
right.
But I mean, and the best part of this movie, I have to say, this is where it comes to theoretically enjoyable, is that they are closing in on the bad guy. The bad guy decides he's going to kill himself, so they can't get to him. So they resurrect him to kill him. I'm like, and there you go. I was like, all right, well, for that, it was worth it.
It's kind of like the last line of Wanted Dead or Alive, I think it was.
Yeah.
Where he's like, F the bonus.
Yeah.
He's got the grenade in his mouth.
Yeah. I mean, this was, so they this is the only movie I've seen where they kill the bad guy. The bad guy gets killed, and they reanimate him
just to kill
so
him.
they can kill him.
That, you know what? That is Reagan era comedy.
This is Reagan era comedy. And I have to say, so, if you want to wait till R.I.P.D. comes out, you have a banner double feature with this. Also directed by Mark Goldblatt, who went on to direct The Punisher. Yeah, the one with Dolph Lundgren.
The one that never was released theatrically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I had a bootleg of that for years before it came out.
So there you go.
Is it more of a comedy tone?
It's a comedy, but it's a very morbid and very violent.
It sounds like it was kind of like your standard 80s buddy comedy where there's the serious cop
and
then the wacky cop.
Yeah, and they try, but the jokes are like, I mean, they're so forced and they're so bad, and it's like, and he's dead.
Right.
He's a zombie. And he's like, "Oh, you look better alive," or I don't know. It's just Joe Piscopo.
Yeah, he was only good standing next to Eddie Murphy.
Yeah,
I mean that's what it came down to.
Yep,
that he was like he was Peter Scolari to Eddie Murphy's Tom Hanks.
That's sad.
It is sad.
So in the end of the movie, he ends up dying for real.
Well, everybody's dead. So they just walk off into the light.
Okay.
They literally walk off into the light. So this movie, gets points also for clearly not attempting to have a sequel at all.
Well, actually, they did try to have a sequel, and the guy who wrote it was like, "But everybody died." And the studio was like, "There was a resurrection machine. Figure it out."
They blew it up.
Yeah, and so but that never. I don't think it made enough money.
It's theoretically enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
So, I guess that brings us to another conclusion of Real Spoilers. We should probably go around and let people know where they could find us online. So Dan.
You can find me at ballroomblitzkrieg.com.
Okay. Blake?
You can find me on reviewstl.com and Epic Fail on Twitter, FEHL.
Kevin?
I'm Kevin R. Brackett on Twitter and, of course, on reviewstl.com.
I am on reviewstl.com, of course, and you can follow me on the Twitter, as the kids like to say, or the kids' parents, probably more specifically, at Roger Kubert. That is my handle. So thanks for tuning in. Next week, we will be spoiling The Wolverine. I can actually put the in front of it this time, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's for real.
I'm not doing it ironically. It's actually called The Wolverine. So next week we'll be tackling The Wolverine. And until next time, Ash was a robot.